So this kid gets home from school, right? It was supposed to be just another normal day, but something felt off. He receives a letter, and the moment he opens it, Haruto is teleported to another dimension. The boy had no idea what was about to happen. The person who brought him here starts talking in his head. Turns out it is a version of himself from 10 years in the future. His future self warns that Haruto will become the greatest time-space wizard of all time, but it will be too late. So he realized he had to contact his past self to speed things up. Now he has to grind to level F in Ixenuku alone to talk to his future self again. Back home, the protagonist wonders, does this even make sense? And then he remembers his day, his horrible day at school. At Haruto's school, he basically got tossed around and used his face to scrub the floor. Because of his class, they were mocked, saying it was just a basic spell and he should not have been hit. Poor kid was frustrated, too weak to even get up. Naruto just stood there and asked if they were done yet. He wanted them to give back something they took from him. The guys told him to go get snacks for everyone. He bought it, but forgot the soda, and that was a big mistake. Because of that, his punishment was to receive some fire spells. The bully launched another attack and almost hit Haruto. At least this time the poor guy did not have his face dragged on the ground. Their innocent fun was interrupted when a girl showed up and she was furious. This is her name, and she is part of the disciplinary committee. They returned what they took from Haruto, but he was not quick enough to grab it. He dropped it and the screen of his phone cracked. Just like his reputation, she ran up to him to see if he was okay, but he told her to stay away. If she stays close to him, people start treating her the same way they treat him. The girl really does not argue, but she is very worried about, frustrated by being so weak. Haruto tells his friend can't be like they were when they were kids anymore. At school, everyone laughed at him behind his back, whispering about how he was the weakest kid there and wondering how he even got enrolled. He only got in because of his parents' connections, and unfortunately, they are no longer around. They were unfortunate enough to be on a plane that had a malfunction. After that terrible day, Haruto made a decision. He was heading to the dungeon that his future self told him about. He brought the letter and the thing started to talk to him, guiding him to a blank wall. He had to press the letter against the wall and, as if by magic, it opened up and revealed a secret passage. Inside the room, a blue stone was floating, held by chains. It is a skill cube. If you touch it, you gain a skill. Haruto approached and saw his own pathetic reflection. Before touching it, the stone just shocked his hand and turned red. Energy lines started to flow through all the wall, and then the ceiling opened up. All the concrete blocks in the room were sucked up and formed a giant stone golem. You could see it even through all the dust. Haruto was paralyzed by fear. There was no way he could fight that. When the creature moved, it was incredibly fast. It struck him with an attack so fast that he could not even process it. He was thrown against a wall with the letter from the future on one side and his broken phone on the other. The picture on his screen caught his attention. It was his family, the only people who ever loved him and made him feel good. Then, the letter started talking to him again. The voice in the letter loved and cared for him too. And maybe, just maybe, this person loves him more because it is him. His future self? Is he really just going to accept? Is he going to lose everything again right here in this dark place? Haruto remembered that humiliation. He could not just let it go. He had to get revenge. The golem attacked furiously. Haruto reached for his sword, but he was hit. A system message appeared. Hidden mission requirements have been met. The adventurer's death been cancelled. Then our boy just bursts with energy. A massive explosion goes off in all directions and his body starts to heal. The concept of space-time has been acquired. Haruto was no longer the same loser as before. Surrounded by blue light and with a renewed appearance, a system window reveals that he has finally acquired space-time magic. The voice from the future apologized for not warning about the trap earlier. It explains that space-time magic will only be discovered in 10 years, becoming an exclusive skill. The young man asks if he really came from the future, and his older self confirms tutorial has already started. Without wasting any time, the golem attacks again, but now the boy is ready to fight back. With that, he dodges the monster's strike, an impressive speed he did not have before. The protagonist realizes that his body is much lighter and wonders if it is the effect of the ability. Then, the letter says it will teach him how to fight, telling him not to see with his eye, but to feel. The voice from the future explains that the boy must feel the flow of time that dominates the world. Focusing, the boy repeats the words of his older self, trying to understand the power. The entity says it knows he can do this because in the end, they are the same person. Seeing this, the stone monster prepares an even stronger attack to crush him. However, protagonist closes his eyes and concentrates, trying to feel the flow around him. The boy remains still as the giant fist of the creature descends toward him. He tries to feel the way time flows in the world, just as his older self instructed him. With his eyes shining bright, the boy snaps his finger, seeming more confident. The creature attacks again. The young man jumps back, dodging the blow by a hair. Then he confidently smiles and declares that he will use space-time magic with his new speed. He runs up the golem's arm, leaving it stunned. At that moment, a system window appears, and he uses the physical acceleration ability. The boy lunges forward like a spring, gaining incredible speed. Suddenly, he scales the monster at high speed, looking like a blue flash of light in the dark. Upon reaching the top, he jumps and realizes how impressive his new power is. Then, he plunges his energized sword directly into the golem's weak point. The boy lands on the enemy's head with his sword buried to the hilt in its core. From within, the core of the stone creature begins to slowly crumble. At that moment, a flash of purple light blinds everything around, signaling the end of the monster. Creature then disintegrates into countless fragments fly around the room. After destroying the enemy, the young man lands safely on the floor of the secret chamber. Looking back, he sees the remaining pieces of the golem turning into dust. A system window appears. It shows that he leveled up 4 times and earned a lot of credit. In light of the reward, the entity asks if he finally believes in it now. Then, the letter calls him Microbzinho, his loser nickname from school. The boy holds the envelope and admits that he trusts it a little, and the voice says it is time for the next phase. As he leaves the room, the young man asks if there is anything else to do, and the letter confirms that there is. His future self says they need to go to Rinina because she will die today. Protagonist stops abruptly, shocked by the revelation, and wonders what it means. Completely confused, he demands an explanation for what he just heard. The voice confirms that your childhood friend, Rin, is really in danger. She is going into a dungeon with friends and will die to an boss stopping in his track. His older voice instructs him to save that girl. Then, Then, the being asks him to use his power to change her fate. With determination in his eye, the voice calls him a time-space wizard and tells him to act. The voice from the future details that the girl will die today in the rank D dungeon of Ikebukuro. The entity explains that the cause will be a surprise, a rank C extra boss that will appear. The future self continues saying that his group call for help, but no one will arrive in time. Furious with the explanation, the young man screams at the voice to shut up and run toward the dungeon. He then angrily asks why his older self did not warn him about this much earlier. The letter reminds him that he hates getting involved with others, and therefore acts with indifference. Upon arriving at the dungeon, the boy comes face to face with a monster but ignores it, keeps going. The voice provokes, calling him by the nickname Jeremy to test his determination. With that, the being tells him to stop, pretending he does not care about anything and accept his feelings. The entity says he can change the world, power he now has in his hand. The boy charges ahead and defeats all the goblins in his path in one go. The voice ends by saying that the future depends only on the action it takes now. The protagonist tells his future self to shut up and slides across the floor with his aura act. He then declares firmly that he will do what his heart tells him, no matter what happens. Satisfied, the entity says this was the answer it was waiting for, and that it will reward him for it. Meanwhile, in the central chamber of the dungeon, a massive explosion of energy. The force of the impact violently throws Rim back. Unable to react, she crashes to the ground with force, and her teammates look horrified at the scene. From a distance, we see the girl on the ground as a friend screams her name in despair. The young woman remains unconscious, fallen and injured on the ground. With difficulty, she opens one eye and faces the being that attacked her moments before. Before them appears a knight in black armor, holding a giant sword. Then, a window reveals that he is the extra boss of rank C, the terrifying Dark Sense. Scared, her friends panic while a girl tries to call for help. Another young woman with a staff tries to motivate the group to fight together. However, one of the guys backs away in fear, saying he does not want to fight, and end up dead. But the monster gives them no time to argue and moves forward to attack again. Its giant blade comes down with devastating force toward the student. The strike hits the ground, causing a massive explosion of purple energy at the spot. After the dust settles, we see Rini panting and exhausted. In her eye, the reflection shows all her friends defeated on the dungeon floor. Looking ahead, the girl realizes she is the only one still able to stand. Companions are all seriously injured and can't fight anymore. With their last strength, one of them begs the girl to save him from his situation. Without hesitation, the girl turns and faces the Grim Sentinel for one last attempt. With a battle cry, she charges forward with her flaming spear to attack the monster. The strike hits the creature's armor head-on, but it seems to have no effect. In response, the boss unleashes a wave of blue energy that easily repels. Completely shocked, the girl realizes her strongest attack was useless. Seeing her chance, the Black Knight raises his sword for the final blow. The giant blade descends rapidly toward the girl, who is defenseless on the ground. In desperation, she screams for help and a skill window suddenly appears. In that moment, the protagonist appears and stops the strike using energy chain. The boy asks his friend if she is okay now. Shocked, the girl recognizes him and can't believe what she is seeing. With tears in her eye, the girl still can't believe he is really there. The boy shields her with his body and tells her to stay back while he holds the chain. He then turns to the Grim Sentinel and realizes that his chains won't hold much longer. With a powerful blow, the monster breaks free and the young man jumps to avoid being hit. He lands safely at a distance from the enemy. Preparing for battle, the creature attacks again, but the boy uses his speed to dodge the strike. Getting close enough, he manages to block the giant's sword with his own blade. He sees a weak spot in the monster's armor and aims his attack right there. However, upon attacking, he realizes that the boss's armor is much more resistant than it seems. The force of the impact pushes him back, and he struggles not to be thrown far away. The enemy's sword continues pressing against him, and sparks fly everywhere. He is finally thrown backward, and the monster breaks a piece off the boy's sword. Seeing this, the boy realizes the boss is preparing some kind of ranged attack. The gem glows with dark energy and starts to crack, releasing immense power. Then the monster fires a huge beam of purple energy towards the young man. The creature's attack causes a gigantic explosion of purple energy throughout the room, but the boy uses physical acceleration to dodge the deadly beam just in time. With shining eye, he realizes that his sword alone won't be enough. He remembers how his blade could not even scratch the monster's armor. With that, he concludes that there must be a weak point somewhere in the enemy's defense. Then, the young man realizes that the weak point is the head, and that he needs to direct his attack. The voice warns him that the sword is useless. The boy charges forward to attack anyway. He smiles and says he already knows that while using material restoration magic. With that, the broken sword begins to reconstruct itself in front of his, but the monster prepares a black energy attack. However, at that moment, the sword hits the boss's head, stunning him. He for a moment, seizing the opportunity, the boy attacks with all he has, causing an explosion of blue energy. The blow lands perfect, and the monster's head starts to crack with the impact. He lands safely while the voice says he managed to change his destiny. In front of his friend, the hero looks at the defeated enemy on the dungeon floor. Still on the ground, the girl looks up, shocked by the protagonist's ability. Firm step. The girl stands up and walks towards the boy wanting explanation. She keeps walking and angrily asks how he managed to do that. Completely confused, his friend shouts again, wanting to understand what happened. Pointing at her savior, the young woman demands that he explain himself immediately. But before anything else, the girl says she is going to thank him for saving the group. With her face slightly flushed, she shouts her thanks for saving her and her companion. The boy feels a bit embarrassed by the thanks and says it was nothing. Then, the young woman gets quite close and asks what kind of magic he used. That moment, the voice from the future warns him not to mention time-space magic. The girl looks at him suspiciously, and the boy does not know what to say. Changing the subject, the boy asks her to a secret that he was the one who saved. The girl is shocked by the request, and he explains that he does not want to draw attention to himself. The voice tells him to keep stalling, and his friend is surprised by the sound. His friend asks if that voice was his. The young man immediately denies it. The entity apologizes, but the boy promises to get back for it later. Confused, the boy does not know what to say to his friend after the mix-up. Next, he makes up a story about testing a sword skill that is still incomplete. Because of this, the young man desperately desperately pleads with her to keep it a secret for now. With a flushed face, the girl seems to consider her friend's proposal. Then, with a suggestive look, she asks if this is a secret just between the two of them. Protagonist, somewhat confused by his companion's unexpected reaction, smiles. His friend finally agrees, and the boy sighs in relief for having escaped. Back school, protagonist narrates he avoided the death that was supposed to happen to Hinny. He also reflects that at the same time he gained immense power and magic. The boy remembers past cannot be changed as the class bell rings, but now the young man concludes his new power. He can finally change the future. At that moment, a classmate calls him by the nickname Jerem to provoke. We see a trio of bullies laughing and mocking our hero for no apparent reason. Their leader says as he heard that the boy went to the dungeon and saw him running out of there. They continue to tease him, saying he does not disappoint for having attracted an extra boss. The bully says that a friend got hurt and went to the hospital with a hefty bill. With a smirk, he demands money to not tell anyone that he saw the boy there. Even surrounded by the bully, our hero remains silent without answering. Annoyed, one of the guys creates a fireball and threatens the young man with his off magic. Calmly, protagonist responds firmly that he does not want to be attacked by the bully. Is surprised by the response and seems unable to believe what he just heard. With a dark look, the boy repeats that he does not want to and calls them pathetic trash. The group leader lunges at him with a clenched fist, ready to strike, but the protagonist narrates thanks to the increase in his skill, everything changed. Now he can track every movement of his enemy, perfect accuracy. With that, the boy dodges and counters their attacks with incredible speed. In an instant, all three bullies are on the ground, completely defeated. Shocked, they look at the boy and wonder what the hell happened to him. The boy stares coldly and warns them never to show their faces in front of him again. He then takes out a lighter while holding the bullies' items and asks they know what will happen if they disobey. Terrified, the bullies point at the boy, not knowing what to say about the threat. The lighter lit, he seals the promise between them in a very intimidating way. He repeats his polite request. The look makes it clear what will happen if they fail. Terrified, three boys nod in agreement, not daring to say another word. Relieved, the young man sighs and decides it is best to head back classroom. In class, he wonders if the next lesson will be measuring magical element. The teacher announces that they will start the semester's measurement and calls the boy's name. Our hero stands up politely and responds to the master's call for the test. He remembers that last time his magical power was practically zero in everything, but now, as a space-time wizard, he wonders what the new result will be. Walking forward, the boy thinks about using his new magic just to test it. He then touches the magic mirror under the watchful eye of the teacher. Closing his eye, the boy concentrates and begins to release his bluish energy. His eyes shine with an intense light as he activates his secret ability. Bright light explodes from the mirror, leaving the teacher completely shocked. The scene. He is completely paralyzed, not understanding what is happening. Then, huge explosion of blue energy, blinding everyone in the class. Force is so great that the magic mirror cracks and shatters. In total shock, the master screams that this is impossible, cannot be true. Scratching his head, the boy bitterly regrets using so much power at once. Our hero realizes that instead of being discreet, he ended up drawing too much attention. Meanwhile, his friend Rinny tries to hold back her laughter at her friend's situation. The young man starts to hear whispers wherever he goes in the hallways. The students comment that he destroyed the device and has power above level up. Protagonist realizes comments about him have completely changed overnight. He then goes home, feeling more tired than usual because of all the attention. But suddenly a familiar voice calls his name, and the boy turns to look. The young man is confused and looks around trying to figure out where the call came from. The mysterious voice says it is right there, and he still does not understand what is happening. Then, something appears out of nowhere right in front of him. Completely startled, the boy screams without understanding what is happening. Suddenly, a cute pink creature appears and reveals itself as the mysterious voice. With a look of astonishment, he finally recognizes the voice calling. The young man asks if it is his future self and why it has such a strange appearance. The doll explains that it used time-space magic to possess a stuffed animal, but at that moment the entity says it has an emergency and needs to act. The stuffed animal then says there is no time for small talk now. His future self reveals Chaos Dragon appeared much earlier than expected. Our hero tenses up and asks about this dragon, gritting his teeth in fear. The boy discovers that he is a very dangerous creature. He is an alpha-level monster marked for extermination that has already attacked several. Cute little creature explains that the beast destroyed the local adventurers guild and caused an unprecedented catastrophe, leaving many injured. The entity says that this is exactly what happened in his original timeline. Now they need to defeat it, or another tragedy will occur as the story predicts. The boy is stunned by the revelation of the impending catastrophe. He then suggests calling the adventurers guild to request a hunting party. At that moment, the doll interrupts and says there is no more time, as it is already too late. The young man is confused, and his future self reveals that the dragon is already right. At that moment, the gigantic Chaos Dragon appears, roaring in front of the protagonist. Panics and asks why the creature is not in a dungeon. His future self explains that this is a species that travels in the open sky. At this rate, he realizes that the school will be completely destroyed by the monster. Outside, the other students walk calmly, unaware of the threat. A group of students is chatting casually until the sky suddenly dark. Looking up, they see the beast and wonder why it is there. The monster's glowing red eye look the student pure malice. Terrified, the students start running desperately for their lives. A blonde girl screams for the regular students to evacuate the area immediately. Soon after, she and her group of wizards prepare for the battle about to begin. The boy recognizes the group and says it is the Student Council of Wizards. A huge pink magic circle then forms on the ground, preparing a powerful attack. Several smaller circles appear around the beast, setting the stage for the attack. With that, the students launch a combined magical attack directly at the monster. The group leader shouts the beast will not step on the school. Then their powerful pink magic hits the dragon head on, causing a very bright light. But despite being hit direct, the giant monster seems to feel nothing. A huge explosion lights up the the entire sky, and it seems that the threat has finally been contained. The team members then celebrate, believing they have defeated the beast. With a confident smile, the blonde girl believes her team did a good job, but to everyone's shock, the attack did not work, and they can't believe what they are seeing. The evil creature seems to absorb the attack, prepares for a devastating retaliation. Then, the dragon fires a beam of full energy toward the young wizard. In the blink of an eye, the entire student council is completely defeated by the monster. Your future self says this is not a surprise, since they are just students. The cute creature calls the boy's name in a serious voice. Then the doll spits out a pink goo right in our protagonist's face. The young man screams, asks, "What the hell are you doing with that?" His future self explains that it is dragon scent to attract the beast. The smell will make the monster chase him and ignore everyone else around. With that, the entity says it is now his turn to finally defeat the dragon. The monster's red eye locks on, and the gigantic creature advances in his direction. At that moment, the doll desperately screams for the boy to run as fast as possible. The boy then runs for his life while the beast tries to crush him from behind. He then looks back, worried, hearing his friend ask another girl if she is okay. Looking back, the young man sees Rhina and the other defeated council members on the ground. His future self asks he does not want the girl to get involved in this battle anymore. The boy confirms, and the entity tells him to go, as it will reduce the chances of being noticed. With that, the hero activates physical acceleration and begins to flee at high speed. The giant monster then roars and fiercely chases him through the streets of the city. At that moment, the young man leads the beast to the Nakano train station in Tokyo for a fight. The protagonist confirms that the place is empty, and the entity instructs him to jump the fence. After jumping the fence, he turns around and asks about the creature's characteristics. The cute creature says that its element is dark and that its breath can defeat enemies. Then, it explains that it is resistant to physical attack, and the young man understands why. The entity confirms and explains that because it is not intelligent, the smell worked to attract it. The boy agrees, and the entity says that 500,000 credits was a good investment. Shocked, the boy asks if he heard correctly the absurd amount of money spent. Furious, he grabs the doll upon learning the amount was taken from his account without permission, and asks how his future self managed to find out the bank pass. Although the reason is quite obvious, completely discouraged by the situation, the young man thinks this is madness. His partner tells him not to worry, because he will recover the money quickly. He explains that the money is just a bonus, and that the real prize is a skill stone. This stone, he will gain a new and powerful magic time and space. The protagonist swallows hard, and says to continue the plan from where they left off. The doll reveals that because it is young, the monster's weakness will expose its core. But before he could say the location, the beast roars and attacks them with all its strength. The force of the blow is so great that our hero is thrown far away. Then the creature shouts for him to be careful, and the boy thanks her for the useless advice. At that moment, the dragon fires a giant beam of full energy in his direction. A huge explosion, and the young man tries to defend himself best as he can with his sword. The boy manages to dodge and says he narrowly avoided the creature's devastating blow. But suddenly he notices something strange and has a look of total shock. Pink explosion happens exactly where he was standing just a few seconds before. The shockwave is so powerful that it destroys everything around with incredible force. Amid all the smoke, the giant monster lands on the ground and surveys the damage caused. With a mischievous smile, the beast believes it has won, and its chest begins to glow. Out of nowhere, a blue light appears, and a sword strikes the dragon right in the chest. The creature is confused, not understanding what happened, and the young man starts to explain. He reveals that what the beast saw was just its image from half a second ago. His partner says he used space-time magic to dodge, and is proud of it. Without wasting any time, the boy jumps towards the monster to attack its weak point. He finally sees the dragon's core glowing in the chest of the enormous creature. With a determined look, our hero shouts that he finally found what he was looking for. Then, with all his strength, he prepares a devastating blow to the core. The sword hits the beast's weak spot head-on, causing a very intense glow. The young man says something does not seem right, and, despite the blow, he has a bad feeling. Suddenly, the beast's body dissolves into purple energy and sucks our hero in. Completely confused, the guy wonders what the hell is happening around. Then, the monster materializes again from that strange smoke. Annoyed, he complains that his future self never mentioned this bizarre ability. The entity explains that the beast's body can turn into poison, and that it needs to be. With a sideways glance, the boy asks to be informed about things before the fight starts. The doll then starts explaining that the dragon uses its energy to create a body. With that, the creature finishes regenerating and roars with all its malice. Then, purple smoke transforms into several bats that fly toward him. Scared, the protagonist says it is impossible for that monster to be a cub. His partner confirms that a powerful enemy, who was supposed to appear in 5 years, has appeared now. The young man asks why such a great threat appeared so early in the story. The entity responds that it might be because he changed the future, and that he must defeat him. Sighing, our hero complains that his future self is transferring all the responsibility onto him. That moment, the swarm of bats flies in his direction, leaving him completely in shock. With no time to lose, he activates his physical acceleration to escape the swarm of creatures in the air, quickly manages to cut one of the dark bats was chasing. This moment, the doll realizes that the little dragons do not turn into poison when defeated. The entity advises to defeat the minions first, and then wait for the right moment to attack. The young man falls onto the tracks and agrees plan, saying that is exactly what he will do. Then, he begins to concentrate energy in his feet, preparing for the next move. With a determined look, the boy gets ready to plan into action and end the fight. At that moment, he charges forward at an impressive speed, leaving a trail of light behind him. With the sword in hand, he cuts through all the dark creatures that appear in his path. The hero continues his relentless attack and destroys several of the monsters with his strike. Your partner watches the fight, calculate that he should level up about 3 times after this battle. The boy pauses for a moment to catch his breath and believes he has defeated all the lesser enemies. Suddenly, the main creature reappears at the end of the track, core glowing. Our boy is shocked by what he sees in front of him. Taking advantage of the distraction, the dragon fires a devastating energy beam at. A gigantic explosion occurs at the site, engulfing everything around in its flame. Directly by the explosion, our hero is thrown far away by the imp, but the creature does not stop. stop, and already begins charging another shot of black energy. With wide eyes, the young man realizes he won't have time to dodge the blow. Frustrated, the guy complains that he barely had time to breathe. And here comes another powerful attack. A second explosion lights everything up, but the outcome seems a bit different from the previous one. He then complains that he spent too much energy on the minions earlier in the battle. The boy realizes that at this rate, he only has a few more minutes before he runs out of strength. With that, he decides he needs to hit the monster's core before it is too late. Suddenly, protagonist is surprised to notice something strange coming from the enemy. The monster then begins to fly high, and his partner warns that its attack won't reach him. The beast roars and prepares to unleash another devastating attack from above. Desperate, the young man wonders what he can do in this complicated situation. He then looks to the side and seems to have an idea when he spots the stopped train cart. The hero realizes he can use the train to gain the necessary height for the attack. With a determined look, focuses on the train cars and devises a new attack plan. The young man realizes he can use the cars to reach the height needed to attack. With that in mind, prepares to use the trains as a launching platform. Partner asks plan is, and says the situation is getting really dangerous. Without giving any explanation, the boy grabs the doll tight, startling the creature. Then he starts to run and says his partner is coming with him to help with his strategy. With great agility, the hero jumps from one container to another to gain more height. Even at the top, partner warns that he still can't reach the monster, and the boy agrees. Protagonist squeezes the cute creature and explains that is why he needs a little help. Then he launches his partner like a cannonball towards the dragon, which looks confused. Next, the young man activates a magic of time and space and summons a magical chain. The chains are attached to the doll that hangs in the air. Not understanding what is happening, the hero uses his partner as a springboard and leaps to reach the giant beast in the sky. Seeing him approach, the dragon roars and prepares for an immediate counterattack. With a determined look, the boy repeats the magic to stop the creature before it turns into poison. The magical chain forms completely and advances toward the flying creature. With that, the magic binds the dragon, and the boy explains that he can only hold it for a few seconds, but assures that this short time is more than enough to finish the fight. With his sword shining intense, prepares for the final blow against the monster. The attack hits the core of the beast head-on, causing a very bright glow on impact. With a focused look, the hero uses all his strength to destroy the enemy's weak point. The dragon's core begins to crack under the pressure of the sword and releases a full energy. Suddenly, the chains of time and space break, freeing the giant creature. Even so, our protagonist does not give up and continues to push the sword with all his might. In the final moment, the beast roars in pain as its body begins to dissolve. Finally, core shatters into several pieces, and the monster is defeated once and for all. A big explosion occurs, and his partner falls to the ground after being thrown. The young man's sword can't handle the pressure either and breaks after the final blow. Tired and breathless, the hero finally relaxes after the intense battle just ended. Soon after, a system message confirms that he defeated the dangerous Chaos Dragon. Relieved, the boy carefully observes the rewards that appear before him. The system informs him that he leveled up 15 times and earned over 800,000 credits. He also receives the Chaos Dragon's Fang and a recommendation to rank up as an adventurer. Partner congratulates him on the victory and says they expected this since they are the same person. But soon after, cute creature gets angry and complains about being used as a trampoline in the fight. The young man ignores his partner's scolding, focuses on the notifications popped up. With that, the system informs him that his space-time magic leveled up 20 times and he learned new skills. He also gained a new passive skill that increases his potential power by %. Despite the anger, the cute creature says it will forgive him since they avoided a catastrophe. Suddenly, his partner hears the sound of siren and realizes the police are coming, saying they should get out of there. Protagonist agrees and says no one can find out they were at the scene. The doll then jumps onto the boy's shoulder, surprised that they agreed on something. Without wasting any time, your hero jumps over a fence to quickly escape the area. After fleeing, they finally arrive at a safe place to rest. In the apartment, the boy sits on the couch with a bag of food in his hand. He opens the packaging of a sandwich and seems to remember something important. With that, the young man asks his partner if he also needs to eat something. The doll sighs and asks how he would eat being just a stuffed doll. The boy retorts that common sense says that a talking creature is strange enough. Then the boy gets an idea and stops eating his snack. Before the first bite, the boy gets up from the couch and leaves the cute creature there watching suspiciously. He then goes to the table and fills a cup with water for someone special. The young man places the cup in front of a photo frame and greets his deceased family. Creature complains and asks his companion not to mock like that. The hero turns and asks why he would do that, and the doll replies that they are the same person. Partner looks of the girl and thinks that he should not talk about Raya now. He decides that he will tell the truth when the boy is stronger like a time wizard. At that moment, the boy remembers that they found a material to create a new weapon. A system notification appears showing the Chaos Dragon's trophy as a reward. His partner remembers that his sword broke, so the moment is perfect for a new one. Creature tells him not to go to class the next day because they are going to create a new weapon. The next day, the young man arrives at the Adventurers Guild and feels intimidated by the place. The boy is impressed by the size of the building, while his partner climbs onto his shoulder with a smug smile. Creature says he can thank him for that later. The hero enters the building and thinks about going home as soon as he finishes what he needs to do there. Inside the guild, a voice calls for adventurer number 23, and the boy realizes it is him. He goes up to the receptionist and explains that he completed a dungeon and wants to check the results. As he hands over his card, the attendant thinks he looks too weak to be an adventurer, but with a professional smile, the woman agrees and says she will check his information. Then, she takes the young man's ID card, prepares to look at the data. The woman inserts the card into a terminal, and his information appears on a holographic screen. The system starts loading all the data of the adventurer for the receptionist's re-evaluation. Next, she asks him to place his hand on the screen, confirm his identity, and check his rank. The hero complies and places his hand on the screen, waiting for the machine to complete the verification. Suddenly, the attendant's eyes widen in total surprise eyes at what appears on the display. Shocked, she sees that his status went from 1 to 100 in a single day. Can't believe. Tremendous. The woman wonders if the machine is faulty or has a serious problem. The protagonist realizes that her reaction is drawing everyone's attention in the play. Not wanting any trouble, he decides to test his new material restoration skill. With a smile, he calls the woman over and says that the identity verification is complete. Confused, the attendant looks at the screen, which now shows the classification, and wonders what happened. The young man pretends to know nothing and asks the woman if there was any problem. Pretending to be calm, the woman hands back the card and says it was nothing. Finds everything very strange. He takes the card back and thanks the attendant for the service at the counter. The boy then reveals that he used his restoration magic to alter the screen. His partner praises him for the smart move, and the hero says he just avoided changing the future. In front of an elevator, he asks the doll which way he should go now. Cute little creature instructs to take the elevator to reach the next destination. Inside the cab, the boy waits patiently while the elevator ascends to the correct floor. The doors open, and he steps out of the cubicle, finding himself in a new mysterious hallway. Arriving at a door, he discovers that only a ranked adventurers can enter, but his partner assures him that this is not a problem and that he does not need to worry. The doll then transforms into a shiny card and falls into the protagonist's hand. Surprised, the young man wonders how that turned into a card, and the object tells him to use it. The boy hesitates and remembers that the reader is a security device, but the card insists. Without further ado, the boy places the card on the security reader, which beats the door open. The young man is excited to start synthesizing his new weapon and a time item. At that moment, someone asks who he is, thinking it is a school field trip. The young man faces the man who questioned and prepares to answer his serious question calmly. He denies being on a school and says he came to synthesize a new weapon. Surprised by the answer, the scientist is momentarily speechless and looks at him doubtfully. Then he asks if the boy's adventurer rank is high enough for him to be inside. We learn that this man is Tokumuni Shiroyama, the director of the Weapon Synthesis Institute. Tokumuni scratches his head and says the boy seems to have rank, but he should not have passed security. At that moment, the hero's partner whispers for him to show the item he got earlier. The boy then explains that he obtained a rare material from an enemy and wants to strengthen his weapon. The director takes the object from the young man's hand to examine it more closely. Using a device on his eye, Tokumuni inspects the catch and says the material is good. Then the scientist asks if it was the boy himself who defeated the monster, and he confirms. Satisfied with the answer, Tokumuni agrees to help him and points to the center of the room. After getting permission, the floor of the lab trembles. Shortly after, a huge piece of machinery starts rising from the floor right in front of the hero. Is impressed by the size of the machine suddenly appeared there. The director says this is the most modern and advanced synthesis machine in the country. He explains that the boy's material is new and therefore wants to monitor the results. With that, the scientist allows him to use the equipment for free and then leaves the room. Partner then offers to guide him through the process since the boy has never done it before. The hero thinks it is not surprising that he knows nothing about the synthesis procedure. After all, only B rank and above students learn about this technique. The academy. Creature says the first is to choose the weapon for the process that will be from the school. Immediately after, the second step consists of selecting the element to imbue the blade. A chart shows that the number of elements depends on the weapon's rank from F to S. The young man's sword is rank F, so it can only have one element slot. The third step is to reinforce the weapon with material. It can range from gems to bone. Creature also mentioned that it is possible to fuse two different swords into one. In his case, the material will be the dragon's fang, and the final step, fusion itself. The system will show the power and time of the fusion, and he prepares to start the process. The boy then declares that the weapon will be his sword and places it inside the synthesis machine. The machine screen shows the element up, and his partner complains about the lack of variety. No other choice. Creature tells him to select the light element, and the boy obeys the command. Compartment opens on and the young man asks he should place the material there. He inserts the dragon's fang into the machine. The hero asks about the fusion time, and his partner tells him to set the time for 3 years. Shocked, the boy screams that it is a joke and that he can't wait that long. His companion tells him to stop complaining, and the young man reluctantly accepts the order. The machine then informs that the synthesis is done and that the weapon will be ready in 3 years. Suddenly, the shiny card flies out of the boy's hand, and he screams desperately for it to stop. Ignoring the plea, the object slides into a secret compartment in the machine. With that, an intense blue light envelopes and the young man wonders what is happening. The glow explodes in a blinding flash, and the system thanks the boy for his patience. A notification appears, revealing that the synthesis is complete and the sword of chaos has been created. Back in the lab, the hero holds his new sword, and his partner warned this was an accept. At that moment, the director looks shocked and shouts, asking how the synthesis finished in just a few seconds. Desperate, Tokumuni fiddles with a holograph screen, trying to understand what happened. Creature tells him to run while the man is distracted, and the young man brandishes his new weapon. The boy thanks him for everything and leaves, while the scientist shouts for him to wait. Exiting the building, the hero hears two people talking about the recent news. One of them mentions the unknown, and the young man stops for a moment to listen to the conversation. The man says that the unknown defeated the dragon alone, and that he is a rookie monster. Your friend says the clans will fight to recruit you, and the protagonist going on his path. An adventurer dreams of being recruited by the Rumika clan, but his buddy mocks the idea. The hero gets confused by the situation and decides it is best to go home and rest, but the cute creature appears and says they should go to a dungeon to test the new sword. With a smile, the doll reveals they are going to the dungeon of the divine beast Cerberus. Then, an image of the three-headed beast appears, and the ground starts to shake. The protagonist is surprised by the suggestion and questions if his partner really said Cerberus. The next day, at the academy, his friend Ryan comes running and calls out the hero's name. The girl ignores the other student and cries, relieved to see her friend is alive and well. Catching her breath, the young woman says she heard that the monster that invaded the school attacked. The young woman says she was worried because he did not read her messages or even come to class. Angry, she shouts that she was very worried, and the protagonist asks what she is doing there. The young woman says it is her who should be asking that, and that she came to ask to go to a dungeon. decision. The boy understands and comments that it is no surprise since she is the best mage in the second year. On his shoulder, creature tells him to stop giving information and to move on, and the young man agrees, wiping his tears. The girl smiles and says she is happy he is safe. The hero then apologizes for making his friend so worried about him. Suddenly, the student notices the creature on his shoulder and asks, "What is that doll?" The girl's eyes light up, and she is amazed by the goodness of the little thing. Without waiting, the girl grabs the doll and asks if she can hold it for a moment. The girl smells the stuffed animal and comments that it has a comforting scent for some reason. She hugs the boy's partner tight, and the young man finds the scene a bit strange. The hero then says she can take it home, and the student is surprised by the offer. The boy tells her to take it home and return it later, and the doll is in despair. The student thanks him a lot and hugs the creature tightly while blushing with happiness. With that, the girl says goodbye to her friend and leaves waving with the stuffed animal in her hand. The hero tells his partner not to be upset because the girl returned him. The creature gets furious and yells that that is not the point, hitting the young man on the back. Even so, the doll grabs the boy's clothes and seems to want to say something important. He reveals that thanks to this, found his childhood friend he lost 10 years ago. Partner thanks the protagonist for helping him find his old friend again. The young man says he is happy to hear that and continues on his way with his friend on his shoulder. Meanwhile, the white-haired boy watches everything from a distance, fiddling with his phone. He murmurs that this boy must be that brat German. With a grim look with a smile, he hopes that the mysterious dragon slayer will be fun to face. The scene shifts to the student guidance office, where someone seems to be waiting at the table. A person slams their hand on some paper and asks they heard is serious. A gem on a uniform shines as the person continues their question in a tone of disbelief. The girl with glasses introduces herself as Yuzu, the vice president, and questions him about the event. The protagonist confirms his version of the story, and the girl looks at him suspiciously from the table. At that moment, Yuzuki grabs some papers and says, "A violent dragon invaded the school 2 days ago." She continues, saying that several witnesses saw a monster flying in the direction he was running. The young man invents a story that the dragon was after another student and that he barely escaped with his life. He then says goodbye to go to class. The vice president asks him to wait a moment, leaving the room. The hero wonders why everyone suspects it was him. His partner shows him the phone and says, "The answer to that question is right there on the screen." In the post, a news article says that a dragon slayer saved Tokyo from the recent crisis. Many people comment in surprise and call the mysterious savior the city's hero. The boy then asks if the creature can delete the post using time-space magic. The doll replies that with its current ability, that is impossible, and the young man understands. He enters the classroom and his eyes widen at what he sees inside. All the students whisper among themselves as soon as they see him and comment he finally arrived, sitting in his seat. The protagonist remembers how his classmates always avoided, but he notices that for some reason the atmosphere in the class is different today. At that moment, Ryan runs in and says there is an emergency because he is there. The same figure from before appears and tells her to stop. The white-haired boy introduces himself as Ryuga Sumarai, the student council president. He then repeats his name and introduces himself as the president of the student council. With his red eyes shining, the president says he came to challenge our hero to a magic duel. At this moment, all the students in the class begin to whisper about the council president's challenge. A group of students comments among themselves, "This whole situation is completely crazy." But one claims that the newbie can't use spells because he does not have magical element. He then remembers that even so, the boy broke the magical measurement device. The device also had traces of unidentified materials, and the hero is worried. He also shows the dragon slayer post, saving Tokyo from a crisis. The boy with white hair then accuses the young man of beating the monster alone and that he took down the chaos dragon, known for its extremely violent nature. The protagonist is stunned, and the president reveals that he finds him a very intriguing person. With a confident smile, he says he finds a rook a very interesting figure, and that is why he needs to take care of the boy, or he becomes a bigger problem. The smile. President reveals to the group that he also defeated a dragon once. Then he proposes a duel to decide which of them deserves the title of Dragon Slayer, and explains that the magical duel is a system for students to measure their strength. The hierarchies in the academy are defined by result, and the best still have privileges. Additionally, after graduation, they can become officers in the Adventurers Guild. The only rule is not to use spells that cause irreversible or fatal damage without duels. Lower-ranked students can challenge higher-ranked ones, who must accept the duel. In this, the hero realizes that since he has a low rank, he can refuse and thinks it would be crazy to accept. At that moment, President warns Ryan that she should choose her friends more wisely. The boy with white hair then says that in her next private tutoring session, he will make sure she learns a lesson she will never forget, and that he will teach this lesson without leaving anything behind. The girl is shocked with a mischievous smile. He says he will also teach her the secret to getting into the council. The girl clenches her fist and says she is looking forward to his guidance. In this situation, both the protagonist and his friend seem quite upset. The hero tightens the brooch on his uniform and catches the president's attention. Protagonist stands up and confronts the white-haired boy who challenged. Protagonist then tells his rival that he wants to talk about the magic duel and state the challenge from the council president. Upon hearing this, the hero's friend is shocked and worried about the young man's decision. The young man then says he accepts the duel, but that he has a condition for the fight. At that moment, President finds it amusing and asks if he really wants to impose any condition. The protagonist points at his rival and says that the loser must leave the academy. With that, the white-haired boy gives a sinister smile at his opponent's audacity. He accepts the condition and warns that it is now too late to back out. Our hero then stares at him with a serious look, full of confidence in his victory. Later, his partner praises the young man's attitude for facing Hyuga this way. Creature then says protagonist is starting to become more like him, but the hero knows that Ryuga is strong and asks his friend knows anything else about it. The doll makes a face. As it knows very well who the president of the council is, it reveals that in the future, Ryuga becomes the manager of the Adventurers Guild in Ixinju, and after developing new fire spell, he becomes one of the 7 great wizards. The hero asks if he becomes a sage, and his friend confirms that the rival's personality is terrible. The creature says it will use its power to take advantage of several students at the academy. The partner also reveals that he is very good at creating factions of followers at school. Then, the doll adds that on top, President also has a natural talent for magic. The creature explains that there is a good reason everyone calls him a genius wizard. Because of all this, partner warns that the young man cannot beat him in his current state. The little creature tells the boy to check his stats to see his progress. With that, a screen shows Haruto Kujo's who was at level 15 as a sword. Looking at the stat, the creature comments that he has grown a lot since the beginning, but even so, partner starts fiddling with the protagonist's attribute screen. He then compares it with the rival's attribute, and the hero is shocked and can't believe it. The screen shows that Ryuga is at level 78 and his class being 10 times stronger. The hero does not believe he can see other people's stat and realizes the difference in power. In the distance, the boy sees two students, one of them crying while her friend comes. The crying girl desperately asks what she should do now in this situation. The student says she can't use magic anymore and will fail the wizard course. Her friend does not understand because she used the staff and spells correct without making mistakes. The girl then wonders if she should take private lessons with Ryuga to fix this. Hearing this, the hero is shocked and the girl's friend agrees that she should accept. Then the other student says she believes private lessons will solve the problem soon. Our boy remembers the rival's wicked smile and him saying that everything ends with the female student and that everything ends. The girl closes her eye, follows his order. The hero clenches his fist in anger and asks to speak with both of them for a minute. The two look back, confused, not understanding what the boy wants with them now. Walking towards them, the girl's friend recognizes him as the one from the swordsman court. Protagonist then stands in front of the two young women with a serious and determined expression. He says that the young woman does not need his lesson and that he will solve her problem himself. The hero reaches out to the young woman, who is surprised by his sudden action. He concentrates and remembers something he learned in the magical elements measurement class. The young man then uses his power to see how the magical elements move. With that, the boy realizes that her magical circuit is blocked due to overuse. All the protagonist needs to do is remove the faulty piece, and the flow of magical elements in the girl will start working normally again. He then asks the young woman not to make too much noise while he helps with the problem. Protagonist extends his hand toward the student, who is very confused by this. The hero's hand then begins to glow with a very intense blue energy. He then pokes the young woman several times, and her friend shouts his name in concern. Then the classmate asks what he is doing. The young man just tells the girl to use magic. The friend asks if she is okay, and the student confirms that nothing happened. The girl then puts her hands together, and a green energy begins to form between them. At that moment, a large wave of magic surrounds the two, and they are surprised by the result. The young woman shouts happily, because now she can use her magical spells again. At that moment, her friend realizes that she has become even stronger than before with his help. With a big smile, Luna seems very happy and relieved with what happened. She thanks our hero a lot, who says it was nothing for him. The young girl cries with happiness and says she won't need Ryuga's lessons anymore. In that moment, protagonist remembers the threat his rival made to his friend Rini. Then, the hero walks through the academy, grabs his attention with a tap on the shoulder. The boy then asks the creature what he can do to get stronger. He explains that there are only 3 days left until his duel against the student council president, and he wants to narrow the power gap by asking for the most efficient training dungeon. The creature smiles and says it was waiting for this, and had gotten a map in advance. Our hero then asks rewards he will receive at the location. His partner reveals that the dungeon give a great amount of experience points, and that in addition, he will also earn a new space-time spell. Creature says it will also be his chance to test the new weapon he synthesized, and that he will also get a summoning, making our hero very excited. The hero was the one who suggested going to the dungeon, but now he feels a bit anxious. Faced with an army of monsters, he wonders how he will defeat them alone. His partner teases him and asks the situation does not put him back in the game. The protagonist agrees and thanks him while his hand begins to glow with energy. Creature warns him not to lose, and the confident young man responds that he won tea. He then charges at the horde of enemies, promising to defeat them all in the dungeon. With shining eyes, the boy shouts that he will win, and the scene shifts to an hour later. Elsewhere, we see a group of adventurers fighting near a large elevator. One of them tries to attack a monster, but his sword breaks upon hitting the enemy. A mage from the group tells him to get out of the way and prepares to cast a spell with his staff. She then unleashes a powerful burst of flames at the crystal knight. With a confident smile, the young woman asks the enemy thought of her magical attack. To everyone's surprise, the monster emerges from the smoke without a scratch. The status screen reveals it is a black crystal knight, immune to magic and resistant to physical damage. The group is terrified, as their attacks are not working, and they find the situation nonsensical. Then, the knight prepares a powerful attack against the adventurer. The two shrink back in fear, waiting for the enemy's final strike that never. But all they hear is the sound of metal clashing against metal. The boy in the group looks at the scene, not understanding what is happening. He is shocked to see that the attack was blocked by someone else. At that moment, a blade strikes the knight's head. Suddenly, our hero appears and delivers a powerful blow to the crystal monster. The enemy then explodes into several pieces, and the group of adventurers is stunned. They realize they are alive and thank the young man for saving them from death. Protagonist warns that there are many monsters in the dungeon and that they should leave soon. The boy asks what will happen to him, and our hero tells them to go ahead. Meanwhile, he will stay behind and hold back the approaching enemies. The young man turns to the horde of knights and tells the adventurer, go. The group apologizes for the trouble and thanks them once again for their help. His partner then warns that this was monster number 89. The creature says he is not even halfway to his goal, and the hero agrees. The boy says he will finish things and level up without holding back. The protagonist wields his sword, ready for battle. He then advances, swift cutting through several crystal monsters in his path. Partner warns these enemies give the most experience in the dungeon. With that, they are perfect for the young man to level up quick. Creature warns that at the boy's current level, these enemies are very strong. At that moment, the swordsman's eyes shine with intense blue energy. Suddenly, chains of energy erupt from the ground and and bind all the enemy. Partner explains that with the Sword of Chaos, the outcome of the battle can change because the blade is charged with the element of light, which is very powerful. Thus, the hero can easily cut down all the crystal monsters. Creature confirms that the boy is already strong enough to fight. He then lands in front of an army of monsters and wants to defeat several of them. The young man concentrates energy in his feet, preparing to charge at the horde, but he changes his mind and says he won't take down just a few, but all of them, with his renewed determination. One of the monsters lunges to attack him. With that, the boy manages to defend himself against the monster's multiple attacks. His eyes shine with a blue energy as he prepares for the attack, and even while taking down several enemies, he seems surprised by their number. After the battle, he is amidst the wreckage of the crystal monster, tired and panting. He sees an even bigger enemy emerging before him. A screen shows Black Crystal General has very high attributes. Partner then warns him that this monster has boss level attributes. The swordsman charges forward, and his blade clashes with that of the giant monster. The young man realizes he needs to act, for the monster's power defeats him. He then decides he needs to use the element of his sword to win. With that, the boy dodges the powerful vertical attack launched by the general. The dark energy in his hand concentrates. Preparing for the counterattack, he positions himself behind the enemy, taking advantage of the opening to attack. With his eyes shining, he prepares to deliver the final blow. With his sword, he takes down the giant monster with a powerful and precise strike. Even after the victory, the hero is panting and his partner calls his attention. Suddenly, an explosion throws him away, and he complains that he is very busy. Creature then starts to explain that the magic of space-time is its power does not depend on magical elements, but on things that control time. He reveals the protagonist uses the chronal element, and that is why he can use magic. The young man complains about the moment, but his friend says that fighting is the best time to learn. At that moment, more crystal monsters advance towards him, continue the fight. The boy uses his energy chains once again to bind all the enemies. While he takes down the monster, Creature warns him to never let his guard down. Then, in front of him, new hooded monsters appear in the dark dungeon. A screen reveals they are black crystal wizards with high magical resist. The wizards begin to charge together a powerful sphere of purple energy. At that moment, Partner reminds the young man that he is a space-time mage, and that even in the middle of a fight, he can learn and dodge the wizard's attack. He instructs him to focus his consciousness on the chronal element without pause. With wide eyes, the hero concentrates as he faces the magical attack. Creature shouts for the young man to take control of the flow of time immediately. With that, the boy's eyes shine with a blue energy and a magical pattern. The wizard's magic then causes a huge explosion in the middle of the dungeon. Protagonist manages to protect himself using a blue energy shield. With that, his shield blocks one of the advancing crystal monsters. The young man then extends his hand and prepares to cast his own magic. A blue energy begins to concentrate in his palm for the counterattack. He fires a powerful energy beam that hits all the enemies in the room. After the dust settles, all the monsters in the dungeon have been completely defeated. The boy looks at his hand and asks if this is what it means to use the flow of time. With a smile, Creature confirms the boy's thought is correct. Partner thinks he is more talented than expected and used the space-time bullet. With that, the hero's attack pierces one of the dungeon's armor with immense power. The hero leans on his sword, standing on a mountain of defeated monsters. Even after the victory, he is panting and visibly tired from the battle. Suddenly, several notification screens appear in front of him, saying that he leveled up. With his energy renewed, he then asks where his next target is. Suddenly, the Class B dungeon boss, and it is the divine beast, Cerberus. The three-headed monster then faces him, fierce snarl and bright eye. The protagonist faces the B-class dungeon boss, the divine beast, Cerberus. Partner then explains that this boss has an unusual sense of dignity and integrity for monsters. Even so, the creature warns him not to let his guard down against the beast under any circumstance. A screen confirms that the enemy is the sacred beast Cerberus, the B-rated dungeon boss. His partner compares the beast to a samurai, saying it has the soul of a warrior. Our hero seems to feel a strong pressure coming from the monster and is a bit out of breath. Cerberus's eye shines brightly as it watches every move of the young man in front of him. Seeing his condition, Creature offers him a potion and says it will make him feel a bit better. The protagonist agrees and takes the potion, preparing to drink it and regain his strength. Three-headed beast just watches him, and the boy wonders if it is waiting for him to recover. Given the monster's attitude, protagonist stands still in front of it, moved by the enemy's honor. The hero says that this is a very strange dungeon boss. At that moment, his partner points out an old wound on the monster and tells the boy to aim his attack. With the potion taking him, feels the intimidating aura of the beast turn and says he realizes that the monster was really waiting, feels indebted to it. The brain tail shines brightly as he prepares to start the fight. Fiercely, the three-headed beast lunges at the boy to attack everything it has. The monster attacks with its claw, but the young man manages to dodge the deadly blow by a hair. With shining eye, he uses time-space magic to move at high speed. The boy approaches and points his sword directly at the old wound, which is the weak spot. He confirms that this is the scar his partner mentioned and concentrates all his power on that weak point. The creature lunges at the protagonist even as he raises his sword. Protagonist, seeing a bite coming, protects himself with his blade. One of the creature's heads bites down on the sword hard to stop our hero's advance. Sparks fly everywhere as the two continue to test their strengths in a great standoff. Seeing an opening, he uses the enemy's head as leverage to jump and reposition himself in the fight. With agility, protagonist soars over Cerberus to attempt a new angle of attack, but one of the heads turns and unleashes a powerful breath attack in his direction. Seeing the danger, his partner shouts desperately for him to dodge that energy attack. With no time to react, the energy attack hits the boy head-on, causing an explosion. However, he uses space-time magic, and what the right beast is just an image from the past. Annoyed, protagonist concentrates his energy, prepares for a powerful counterattack. His hand shines bright and he strikes the old scar of Cerberus directly with his magic. With a scream of power, the boy releases all his energy directly at the monster's weak point. When hit direct, Zebu roars in pain, feeling the devastating impact of the magical attack. After the attack, the hero lands while the beast holds the blade in its mouth. His partner is confused by the young man's action and does not understand what happened at that moment. The creature then remembers the technique he used on the student, heal her magical circle. With that, the monster's wound begins to glow with blue energy and heals complete. Protagonist revealed he healed the beast because he wants to fight his opponent fairly. Completely shocked, but screams that he has completely lost his mind and is going to die. But the boy explains that it is necessary to return the respect he received even from a monster. In a gesture of honor, three-headed beast throws the sword back to the young man. Precision. Partner is shocked and comment the enemy returned the boy's weapon as an equal. With the debt paid, Cerberus now faces the protagonist. However, protagonist refuses the sword and says he need it for the fight. With that, the young man clenches his preparing to fight without his weapon in a fighting stance. He says this is not about leveling up or defeating a boss. With a determined look, he declares that this is just a real fight. The monster seems to understand the challenge and faces him with the same respect. From a distance, his partner does not understand any and wonders what the hell is going on. Without wasting any time, protagonist charges forward, throws a powerful punch at Cerberus, but he realizes the impact was not as strong as he did on. In response, three-headed beast strikes him with a powerful and precise attack. Our young man is thrown hard against a crystal wall. However, protagonist manages to recover and lands on the crystal. Quick, he counters the beast with a powerful jump towards Cerberus. He lands a strong punch beast's face. The powerful blow hits one of Cerberus's head, which seems to feel it. However, he does not give up and tries to bite protagonist. His bite lands on the protagonist's whole arm, and he feels the pain. He grits his teeth and strains with all his effort to survive the attack. The beast then shakes him violently. While being bit, protagonist screams in pain. Seeing this, his partner becomes extremely worried and screams his name in total despair. After playing against the crystal, the protagonist feels pain. His partner tells him to pull himself together. Three heads of the beast begin to charge a power combined energy attack. Protagonist's eye shines intensely as he calmly states he already knows what to do. He then declares that he will put all his strength into this final attack to win. One of Cerberus's heads fires a powerful beam of golden energy in his direction. The attack causes an enormous explosion of light, fills the entire dungeon room. Surrounded by his own energy, the protagonist prepares for the final blow against the monster. With all his energy concentrated, the young man hopes that his body can withstand the power he is about to use. Then he charges forward with a battle cry, unleashing all his energy at once. Without wasting any time, protagonist moves in and delivers some powerful punches to the beast, but the monster retaliates, throws him back with a blow that injures his arm. Despite the pain, the young man stares at the enemy with a look full of hatred and determination. The three-headed beast then roars and lunges with its claws to finish the fight. At that moment, the protagonist concentrates his energy and is preparing for the attack. With his eyes shining intensely, he releases all his strength in a single scream. He lands another devastating punch on one of the creature's head. The beast screams in pain from the impact. Leaping through the air, faces the monster's three head, prepares for his final strike. With a determined look, he shouts this will be the end of the line for the creature. Huge explosion of blue energy occurs, completely engulfs the monster. After the dust settles, we see the protagonist standing and his enemy fallen. The young man then reflects and wonders if he has always been like this in battles. With a sigh, he concludes that he has always been a scatterbrain who acts without thinking. A system window appears and confirms that he has completed the rank B dungeon. Suddenly, he wakes up and a familiar voice asks he is finally awake. Slowly opening his eyes, he seems to not understand what happened in that place. His partner then looks at him very worried, waiting for the young man's response. Sitting on the floor, he says that somehow he managed to defeat the powerful enemy. A screen reveals that he leveled up 20 times, and he wonders what else he gained. The system shows that he received a cloak, and the young man decides to try it on later. But suddenly the hero notices something strange and has a look of shock. To his shock, creature is standing in front of him again. Creature standing leaves the protagonist surprised, but to his surprise, the beast now looks like friendly, completely confused. Protagonist is left speechless by the monster's chain. Creature now looks at him with a gentle expression and even wags its tail happily. Even without understanding, he decides to approach and reach out his hand to the three-headed beast. With that, pets the monster's head, and it seems to really like it. The creature says that the beast likes it, and the protagonist questions if this is really the boss. His partner says it was unexpected, but he still received the reward. Protagonist then asks if the prize was the equip, but the creature immediately denies it. With that, he reveals that the reward is the same Cerberus himself, the best in the dungeon. The entity warns that to form the contract, he needs to feed the beast with his blood. Without thinking twice, the protagonist cuts his finger, offering his blood to he then offers it to one of the creature's mouth. A screen confirms the beast is his servant, and his partner says they have achieved their goal. 3 days later, at the Adventure Academy, someone points to a figure in the courtyard. The students look at our hero and whisper, wondering if it is really with a bandage on his face. The young man walks a serious and determined look. Suddenly, his friend Rena sees him from afar and shouts his name. She runs to him and asks where he has been, as she could not get in. Protagonist explains that he went through special training for the duel against the president. The girl is very worried, wondering what he did to get so hurt. Our hero confidently says that one way or another, he is ready for the fight. Seeing this attitude from the girl wonders if he is the same friend she used to know. With his eyes closed, the young man appears calm and much more confident than usual. From a distance, council president observes, thinks that the rookie had fled in fear. The sly smile. He thinks his rival came just to show how pathetic he is. Then, the white-haired boy and his followers approach them in the school hallway. He then announces to everyone that the duel will take place right after today's class. President asks if he is ready and calls him a dragon slayer. Without hesitation, our hero faces his rival and confirms that he is more than ready. The president then asks if he forgot the stupid condition posed. Protagonist confirms that the loser of the fight will have to leave this school forever. The rival says that is not enough, and the young man asks what he means. The white-haired boy then extends his hand, ready to show off, poses to add 100 million credit bet to make it more fun. Hearing this, our protagonist is completely shocked by the outrageous amount. The other students start pressuring the protagonist to accept the bet. Watching everything, his partner realizes the council president's play. Creature understands that the rival is using the other student to provoke the young man. With that, he concludes that his opponent is as cunning as he always was in the future. The rival then declares that he will take everything the protagonist has at that moment. With a mischievous smile, he adds that he will turn her into his slave. Her friend tries to intervene. The young man interrupts and accepts the bet of 100 million. The council president smiles, satisfied with his opponent's bold response. He then says goodbye, saying he is looking forward to their magical duel later. Before leaving, he turns to the girl and threatens her about her private lesson. The young woman is left completely speechless and terrified by the president's threat. Seeing her reaction, our hero turns around and tells her not to worry. With a confident smile, he assures his friend that he will definitely win the fight. After days of intense training in the dungeon, our young man has prepared well for this duel. Later, after class, the protagonist walks down the hallway. The moment of the duel is finally approaching, but suddenly he stops and looks to the side with a very confused expression. Then, a group of bullies appear, and the leader invites him to play a little before the fight. One of the guys reveals that each of them earns 1 million credit. They take him out. Protagonist hears the threat, but remains calm and shows no reaction. The aggressors ask if he is scared and say that crying won't help, ignoring the taunt. Our hero whispers that this is a huge relief for him, completely confused by the response. The bullies do not understand the situation. He says he is relieved to know that his rival uses glitch and predict. With that, he warns them that they will be the first to receive their share of the reward. Furious at the audacity, the leader of the attackers points his sword and calls him a bastard. The bully shouts for the young man not to get too cocky because of this attitude. With a cold look and his eyes shining blue, protagonist prepares for the counterattack. In the blink of an eye, he charges and knocks the bully to the ground with a single blow. With his eyes shining, he stares down the rest of the group without showing any fear. Then he stands up and says it is a drag having to deal with all of them at once. Meanwhile, in the arena, the rival complains Dragon Slayer still has not shown up. Then he asks the referee if he can win by default. The opponent does not show. His followers say the rookie was a fool and probably ran away in fear of smiling. The president thinks his hench already taken care of the protagonist. In the stand, the hero's friend looks very worried about his disappearance. Suddenly, someone in the crowd shouts that the challenger has finally arrived. This moment, the president and his followers turn around in shock, unable to believe what they see. Completely surprised, the rival asks, "What the hell is that kid doing here?" The hero replies that there is nothing strange about it, since they had scheduled a duel beforehand. Speechless, the council president points at the protagonist, not knowing what to say. Back at school, all the bullies were left on the ground, completely defeated. With a serious look, the protagonist says they can finally start the fight. He turns to the judge and asks him to signal the start of the duel. The judge announces the student from class 3 should take his position for the duel. Then he introduces the student from class 2F, Kuju Haruto, with both fighters in their position, and the judge finally gives the signal to start. The council president grits his teeth in anger for having been humiliated earlier. He then says he does not know how the rookie did that, but he will defeat with his fist clenched. He prepares to show all his power in the fight. In this, your opponent screams that he will give it his all from the start. A massive wave of fire explodes from him and rushes toward our hero. Walking through the flame, President looks very confident in victory. With a sly smile, he asks if his opponent is ready for what is coming. Our hero watches as a screen reveals that he is using an advanced fire spell. Without wasting any time, President charges forward and unleashes a power flame attack. He thinks he could not hold back, and if the strike hit, it will be the end of his rival. But the protagonist remains calm, and his eyes shine with a blue energy. His opponent continues to focus his flames to ensure the strike lands. He notices that the flames create a distortion in the flow of time as they advance. With that, the young man dodges the fireball that passes by him effortlessly. Protagonist keeps moving and escapes several explosions. His face shows an impressive calmness as another strike passes close by. Using his magic, the hero creates a residual image to deceive his opponent. The council president is shocked and screams that this is impossible. The young man steps on the burned ground without a scratch, showing his superiority. Protagonist notices something strange after landing. He then leaps very high in the arena after suspecting something from the ground. Pillar of fire erupts. Fortunately, protagonist realized this in advance. His rival can't believe that even his double trap attack failed. President is stunned as the hero concentrates his bluish energy. He then uses his time lightning ability and shoots a huge beam of energy. The attack hits the president squarely, throwing him against the arena floor. The audience is in shock and wonders how someone without magic this. With a big smile, his friend says what she just saw was amazing. She thinks she already knew this, and that he is no longer the same Naruto as before. As he enters the arena, protagonist asks he was not going to fight everything from the start. Already standing, President watches the protagonist, who is quite injured. With a furious look, protagonist's rival seems to be very angry about the situation. He then screams in rage and releases a huge amount of flames around. His partner explains that this spell involves direct attack, flames of 3,000 degrees. But our hero calmly faces the attack and begins to manipulate the flames with his hand. President shouts that the spell burns everything it and that he will become ash. With that, protagonist advances and kicks his rival's leg to unbalance him in the duel. He then grabs Ryuga's arm, immobilizing him on the ground. President on the ground. Protagonist prepares to deliver a blow to his face. With a look of shock, the hero's rival seems to fear the hit. However, out of mercy, protagonist lands the blow only on the side of the president. Our protagonist then calmly says that he managed to extinguish the flames of the attack. Furious, President points at the young man and calls him trapped. That will be rejected. With that, the rival turns to his followers and asks they know what to do, their hands glowing. President's followers shout his name and agree to help. With that, a large symbol of fire forms above the president as he absorbs the magic. President smiles as he receives the power, and the voice of the future says it is a violation of the rules. Our hero then asks how much energy he needs from other bite. Protagonist's rival just lets out a malicious laugh with his hair on fire. Suddenly, his feet begin to transform into dragon claws with his sneak. An hour of fire engulfs the president. The attack then explodes into a huge column of flame, rises to the ceiling of the arena. Seeing the power of the magic, the young man is shocked, can't believe what he sees. That moment, the flames begin to take the shape of a huge fire dragon in front of him. The fire creature is a summoning, and the protagonist knows he can't win in a normal way. Even so, protagonist faces the creature and says he already already knows he can't fight normally. In front of the enormous fire dragon, creature launches a flame attack against the protagonist. With an impressive jump, he manages to dodge the creature's powerful attack, then fires a blue energy beam from his hand to counterattack fire monster. Wide-eyed, the hero can't believe what just happened. The fire monster took no damage, and the young man realizes his strike was useless. Meanwhile, flaming creature prepares to deliver another blow and end the duel once for all. The enormous dragon advances and corners the protagonist. Recoiling from the flame, he finds himself completely surrounded by the enemy's fire. Pressed against the wall, he has nowhere to run. The young man then realizes he has no more place to run and is completely trapped. The huge fire creature surrounds him on all sides to prevent his escape, but with his eyes shining blue, protagonist seems to have a new plan in mind. He then notices something strange in a part of the flow of time within the monster. Protagonist realizes it is like a crack or fissure in the flow of time. With that, he thinks that if he widens this gap, he might have a chance to win. Fire dragon attacks with its giant claw, smashing the ground, but a blue light shines right in the palm of the creature's paw, surprising everyone. Suddenly, the hero appears surrounded by blue energy and stops the dragon's attack. Then he jumps away, and we see he used an image from the past to dodge the blow, holding his sword. Protagonist asks his partner to let him use the stuffed animal again. The cute little creature appears, saying that he is going to do this again, but ends up agreeing. With that, protagonist grabs his partner, who has a desperate look on his. He then throws the creature, which glows with blue energy and has an angry face. Protagonist hits ground and uses a chain ability to hold his partner in the air. With that, he uses the toy as an anchor to swing and gain momentum. With a focused look, the young man prepares to attack a fire monster with everything he has got. The hero then charges at the flaming creature at high speed to attack. With his eyes shining intensely, he focuses on the weak point found in the enemy. He then realizes that this is the fissure in the flow of time he saw earlier in the duel. With a shout, protagonist readies his sword to strike the creature's weak spot. Then, he delivers a powerful blow that cuts the fire dragon in half with his blade. The protagonist lands safely while the monster dissolves in dark flame. Seeing his attack defeated, President is shocked, not understanding what happened. Desperate, the council president pulls his hair, not grasping what the hell just happened. He screams that it is impossible, and that as long as the followers sing, the magic regenerates infinitely. President approaches and asks why the magic did not regenerate. President continues to shout that there is no magical principle like the one he knows. Our protagonist lands a powerful punch to the chest of his arrogant opponent. Blow. The white-haired boy falls to the ground, completely defeated and powerless. The teacher supervising the duel is shocked. Protagonist asks what the result is. Then he announces that the winner of the duel is our hero, Fuju Haruto. We see Ryan and her friends at a party where she gathers everyone to celebrate. They then throw confetti and congratulate our hero on his victory in the duel. A bit embarrassed by the celebration, our hero can only thank everyone. The girl then hands him a cup and asks him to make the toast. The young man then sits at the table, girls who look at him with anticipation. He looks at the glass and agrees to make a toast so the celebration can begin. With that, everyone raises their glasses, toasts together with great happiness. The students continue the party, drinking and eating the snacks on the table. One of the girls then says she is relieved President is leaving the school. The others agree and complain that he was a horrible and very abusive guy. One of them hugs Rinnie and says she barely escaped President's shit. Suddenly, classmate asks hero what happened to the 100 million from the bet. Protagonist takes a sip of his drink, then puts the glass on the table and admits completely forgot about the bet. The girls are completely shocked and scream that it was a huge waste. Protagonist calmly explains that he was never interested in the money from the bet. Upon hearing this, the girls have hearts in their eyes, think his attitude is cool. Then, one of the students calls him by name, wanting to ask something important. She then asks what his relationship ran, leaving him very confused. The sudden question, his friend spits out her drink in shock at the situation. The young woman then yells at classmate, asking what she is talking about out of nowhere. Friend explains that he got into a fight, best student in school because of. Meanwhile, the other girls gather around and ask again what the relationship is between the two. Pressured by the student, protagonist does not know what to say and starts to stutter. Seeing his reaction, the girls move in closer, waiting for his answer. With no way out, he suddenly stands up and makes up an excuse about needing to go to the bathroom to escape. Watching him leave, the girls comment that he managed to escape their question. One of the girls says he seems to have changed and looks more mature now. Rinnie then remembers that since that day, her friend has always been there for her. She recalls when they were kids and he protected her from a giant, fierce creature. In the flashback, we see the young boy protecting his friend with a simple stick. Back in the present, Rinnie holds her cup and thinks that things have always been this way. With a flushed face, the girl remembers that now they even share a secret. She remembers how he saved her in the dungeon that dark night. The young woman recalls the moment her friend defeated the monster with his power. She then remembers how the protagonist stood in front of her after saving her from danger. Meanwhile, in the bath, our hero washes his hands, thinking about the party that happened. He then receives a message from his friend apologizing. Question. Reading the message, protagonist gives a slight smile at the girl's concern. Looking at his reflection in the mirror, he thinks he has not seen something so alive in a long time. With that, he grips the sink more firmly. He remembers his family and how he thought he would never have happy moments again. The young man then questions whether the future can really be changed by his acts. Suddenly, the creature on his shoulder calls his name, get his attention. Annoyed, the boy turns around and tells his partner to be quiet until they get home. The creature warns that it is an emergency, and the young man is confused by the statement. His future self then says in a serious tone that the time has finally come. The protagonist turns around and asks the hell his partner is talking about now. Then, the entity says it will tell him the real reason for being there with that. It reveals that the hero's younger sister, who was supposedly dead, is actually alive, and an image of his sister comes to his mind. Completely shocked, protagonist can't believe what he just heard. He remembers that his sister Ria died in an accident a long time ago. The doll explains that she is not alive in the world he is in. The creature then tells him to get ready immediately for what is to come. With a determined look, the entity declares two of them will save her together soon. We have some flashbacks from the protagonist's protagonist's childhood with their sister. With a big smile, the young girl showed the red scarf she had just made. Curious, the protagonist asked was really Ria who made the gift. Great pride. The little girl jumps for joy and confirms that she did it all by herself. Protagonist thinks it is funny. The girl extends the gift, saying it is for him to wear. Completely surprised, the boy asks if it is really and if it will look good. With that, the young woman pouts and asks if he does not want her gift. Protagonist denies and says that of course he wants the scarf. Hearing this, the little girl breaks into a huge smile of pure happiness. Then she puts the scarf around and says he should have accepted it right away. With the gift around his neck, the boy comments the stitching seems a bit loose. Scarf in place. The girl reminds him that tomorrow is Christmas Day. Then she puts on a fake mustache and says it is a gift from Rihanna Noel. With a kind smile, the hero understands the gesture, thanks her sincerely for the gift. The girl suggests a belated Christmas party after her ball at recital. With a smile, she says that he will also have to give them a gift, but he reveals that he never kept that promise because his family had an accident. Back in the present, protagonist remembers that they never returned home. A voice calls his name and pulls him out of his sad memories of the past. In his apartment, the young man continues lost in his thoughts about what happened. Looking at the shelf, he focuses on a very special memory from his childhood. He looks at the photo of his family and the handkerchief his little sister gave him as a gift. With that, the hero apologizes and asks his partner to repeat what he had said earlier. Creature then tells him to pull himself together because they have a mission that cannot fail. The protagonist agrees but asks why his sister Ria is alive in the first place. He then concludes that everyone died in the accident and that she can't be alive. Partner asks what he knows about the accident and the young man says it was a mystery. In that, the entity explains that this mystery is beyond their current science. Protagonist is shocked by the revelation, not understanding any. The cute creature reveals that a tear in space-time opened in the sky that day. Confused, protagonist asks, what is that? And the entity confirms that it is a dimensional connection. The being explains that the plane was pulled into the hole, and that is why it disappeared from the radar before crashing. Even in shock, the young man says that this does not change the fact that all the passengers died. His partner reminds him that his sister Ria's body was never found in the wreckage of the accident. With that, creature concludes that she was the only one sucked into that hole alone. With wide eyes, the hero finally starts to understand the truth behind everything. The entity says that the place is called the dimensional rift, where time and space are not the same. Therefore, years in this world for the girl be less than the blink of an eye there. When the hole opens again, his sister will finally return to this world. He reveals that this is why he came from because when he discovered everything, it was already too late. The doll grabs his clothes and pleads with the young man to save the girl this time. Apprehensively, the little creature asks the protagonist of this world to do what he could not do in the other. The protagonist remains silent as he watches this creature. He then agrees and asks where and when the hole in space-time will appear. Creature says it will appear right above the Tokyo Tower in the dungeon of the castle in the sky. The next day, we see the city of Tokyo preparing for another normal day of work. Looking at the city, protagonist is ready for the mission. The mission with his sister's scarf around his neck. The doll complains that he bought all the offensive items and healing potions from the store. The young man replies that he only managed to get that thanks to the money he earned in the crystal maze of Azabu. The entity then asks why he is wearing the scarf in the middle of June with a distant look, and our hero simply says that he is very sensitive to the cold and that is why he wears the scarf. Partner understands and decides not to press the issue, so he does not make him uncomfortable. He warns that the gate to the dungeon of the Sky Castle is at the observatory in Tokyo Tower. In 24 hours, the time-space rift will open 300 meters above the dungeon. When that happens, the rift will eject his sister out of the dimensional gap, but if the hero does not arrive in time to save her, the girl will fall. Protagonist clenches his fist tight. With his hand in front, he activates his time-space mage out and prepares to act. With that, a bright blue aura surrounds him as he prepares to enter the dungeon. With his outfit and a determined look, promises that he will save his sister at any cost. Our hero then arrives at the location but is immediately stopped by two armed guards who tell him to stop. They explain that a dungeon gate has appeared and only adventurers of rank or higher can enter. After receiving the information, protagonist decides to take a different approach. His partner then asks what he is going to do, and the protagonist says there is no time and they are going to take a shortcut. With that, protagonist concentrates blue energy in his feet, preparing for a quick action. Then he jumps and starts climbing the huge red tower, using his enhanced agility. Creature says he is learning, but the protagonist complains that his future self is really annoying. The hero continues to climb the metal structure at an impressive speed. Upon reaching the top, the young man peeks over the edge to see what is happening inside the place. Inside, a red-haired man and his guards are analyzing the situation. Serious looks. The young man's partner warns that a troublesome guy has arrived, and the protagonist asks if he knows him. The entity then explains that he is the head of the adventurous guild in the region and is very stubborn. The being from the future also says that the man will just stand there looking at the gate without doing anything useful. Protagonist decides he can't wait and tells his partner that he is going into the portal. With that, protagonist intends to break the tower window to get in. The loud noise catches the attention of the guild leader, who wonders what that sound was, so he orders one of the guards check the source of the noise immediately. The soldier looks out the window, sees nothing broken, feeling very confused. Suddenly, our hero appears like a quick blur behind the unaware guard. With a touch, the young man hits the soldier from behind, leaving him completely unconscious. The guard then falls to the ground, and our hero reveals he used matter restoration skill. He explains that he fixed the glass that broke to get in, and is now thinking about the next step. The supposed guard who was knocked out runs to inform his boss that they have a big problem. The soldier says it is an intruder, and that he is too strong to be defeated alone. Annoyed, the guild leader decides he will personally handle this situation. With that, he shouts for his men to follow him to confront the mysterious intruder. However, one of the guards who was there does not move and just stands still. Slowly, the soldier raises his hand and starts to take off his helmet. Actually, it was our hero in disguise, and his partner congratulates congratulates him on the great strategy. With that, he takes off the disguise. The protagonist approaches the portal and says it is time to enter. Then he walks towards the portal, but upon reaching the other side, his eyes widen in total astonishment at what he sees. Suddenly, the young man finds himself falling headfirst into an inverted world. He then realizes that the landscape around him is completely upside down. Partner explains that going down the stairs in the dungeon of the Sky Castle actually means going up. The cute creature also reveals the theme of the dungeon is occultism and will have undead monsters. Protagonist finds it very ironic to fight against an army of the dead in a light blue sky. Comments that it does not match his style. The entity says it has taken care of that. His friend then reminds him that they imbued his new sword powerful element light. With that, the young man remembers choosing the light attribute during the weapon synthesis. The creature says that this was the main reason for his training and tells him to get ready. With a determined look, the hero advances through the dungeon, ready to face the enemy. His eyes shine with confidence as he prepares for the battle ahead. In front of him, a hooded creature appears for the first confrontation. The hooded enemy advances and attacks our hero, Crystal Staff, but the young man defends himself with his shining sword and prepares for a counterattack. At that moment, his companion explains that this dungeon has disappeared in the future and is unexplored. The entity says it has information, but the protagonist continues to fight against the monster with his firmly on the ground. The young man prepared. The creature reveals that the castle in the sky has a total of 100 floors, and a powerful and inevitable boss guards the dungeon every 20 floors. The hero then calculates that he will have to face a total of 5 bosses at the location. Looking at his phone, he sees that there are 20 hours left and he can't waste time. But suddenly the protagonist's eyes widen. Out of nowhere, a horde of strange zombies starts to appear. In an instant, the army of bizarre creatures appears before our hero. We see the monsters with red eyes and open mouths screaming. No chance to react. Protagonist is surrounded by the creatures. The whole order then jumps on, completely covering him in the process. However, something happens. Suddenly, a silence fell over the dungeon. From within the treasure, an explosion of blue energy, and the protagonist summons the divine beast, Cerberus. With his summoning, he says there is no time to wait, and that they will get through everyone as quickly as possible. The beast screams. Horde of dark monsters. With his new summon, he carves a path through the enemies that appear before him. Looking back, the young man comments that he thought they would be stronger. His partner explains that since it is a sacred, its attacks have the sacred attribute. With that, the hero orders them to advance and break through the horde of enemies. They quickly ascend the floors of the calabozo, defeating everyone in their path. Suddenly, the large creature stops abruptly in the middle of the path. The protagonist then questions his partner about the reason for the sudden stop in the middle of the floor. Looking up, protagonist has a serious expression on his face. At that moment, they see a dark portal appearing in the middle of a circular arena. The entity reveals that this is the first boss that appears every 20 floors. From the dark, an evil energy begins to slowly take over the entire place. Then, a golden carriage appears in the midst of all that black smoke. Then, mysterious figures slowly descend from the vehicle that just appeared. In elegant suits, they come down the stairs. The figure steps on the ground with their stylish boots and reveals themselves to our hero in the arena. Then, a screen reveals that they are the fallen noble family, a group of powerful vampires. The protagonist realizes that there are 3 B-class undead monsters in front of him. The determined expression. He thinks he needs to defeat them to save his sister. At that moment, partner desperately shouts for him as the enemies are coming. Without wasting any time, the trio of vampires charges to attack the protagonist with everything they have got. Calmly, he tells his friend to back off, and the creature asks if he will use the guild item. The young man then confirms that he will while preparing for the upcoming battle. With that, he activates his new ability called Time Eye, and his eye glows blue. Through his special vision, he can see the attack pattern of the younger noble. Protagonist can also clearly see the next move of the vampire attack. He then predicts the flow of time to know how the family master will attack. With this advantage, protagonist prepares his counterattack, bluish energy. He then unleashes a rain of golden calcium knives toward one of the noble vampires. The younger noble makes a face as if he feels nothing, even with the blade embedded in. After they get close, protagonist dodges the attack. Protagonist then lunges at the younger enemy. He uses his golden calcium blade against the other monster. Next, protagonist hits the creature with some dagger, which it feels. With his eyes glowing blue, the hero faces his enemies with total determination. In this moment, he charges at the family master, who screams in anger at the young man's attack. His dagger then strikes the vampire's chest direct. The vampire attempts a counterattack, hitting the protagonist, who protects himself with his arm. The force of the attack throws him back hard, and he screams in pain from the impact. Even injured, protagonist places his hand on the ground. With that, he channels energy and gains some distance. His eyes shine, and he thinks the enemies are in the perfect position for his plan. Now, far from the vampire, the hero raises his hand and gives the command to blow everything up. He then clenches his fist, and an immense blue energy begins to explode everywhere. With that, an explosion hits all 3 vampires at the same time, who scream in pain. A large explosion of blue and green energy illuminates the entire dungeon. Partner explains that each knife is worth 100,000 credit and is made of a very rare metal. Creature then complains that he throws expensive items around without thinking of the consequences. The entity then questions whether it is fair to win just by spending millions of credits in the fight. With a serious look, protagonist says the battle is not over yet and he needs to continue. He reveals that he only destroyed their physical body, and now they have returned as ghosts. The young man realizes that, as he suspects, it is hard to injure ghost monsters with physical attack, but it also exposed their weakness, and he enchants his sword with the light attribute. With his sword shining bright, he charges at the enemies with all his might. With a battle cry, the protagonist attacks the ghost with his sacred blade without hesitation. He then uses the chaos meteor skill, and several beams of light fall from the sky. The blinding light of the explosion illuminates the arena, feeding the ghosts all at once. A system screen informs him that he has defeated the enemy and earned many rewards. After the victory, a staircase of light appears before him, leading to the next floor. Without wasting any time, the hero begins to descend the step, continue his training. With his eyes shining bright, he vows to rescue his sister named Raya. On the 4th floor of the dungeon, the divine beast roars fiercely, but instead of attacking our hero, creature charges in another direction with its its eyes glowing. It turns out that Cerberus was attacking another boss of the floor, the undead Queen Lamia. After the battle, three-headed monster calmly approaches our protagonist. The beast that was once threatening now licks the young man's face like our hero then pets the creature and remarks that it seems more like a pet. With that, they advance to the fourth floor. The entity suddenly shouts for them to stop. Obeying the command, the massive three-headed beast stops immediately, mounted on its new companion. Protagonist asks why they stopped in front of that wall. His partner then says there is no mistake, and the protagonist is confused by the situation. Creature tells him to activate the Eye of Time and look at the wall to see what is there. The young man's eyes shine with an intense blue energy. Looking at the wall, protagonist is shocked by what he sees and can't believe it. With his new vision, he discovers a secret room that disappeared from the original timeline. Then, the doll transforms into the cart and tells him to place it on the wall to open the secret passage. He obeys and puts the envelope in the crack of the wall, as instructed to enter. Before moving forward, protagonist asks his new companion to wait outside. Inside the secret room, he finds a huge blue crystal floating in midair. Suspicious, the young man asks the entity if this is another trap like last. Partner assures him he won't deceive the hero. A system screen appears, revealing that this is an acoustic crystal that unlocks hidden abilities. With a touch, a bluish energy starts to flow from the crystal directly into the boy's hand. Suddenly, the object shatters into several pieces, releasing a dazzling glow all around. The system informs him that he has gained new space-time spells and unlocked his potential. The entity is surprised that he got the avatar replay, and the young man asks, "What is that?" His partner just says it is better for him to test the new ability in real combat. On the sixth floor, they encounter the zombie boss Bills, the Lord of Flies. The doll explains that the monster fly bit is a solution that melts everything and also regenerates. Annoyed, protagonist complains is just listing the enemy's characteristics. His eyes shining, prepares to face the new boss of that dungeon without wasting any time. The monster attacks with its stinger at an impressive speed. The attack seemed to have pierced protagonist's chest. In the blink of an eye, protagonist appears behind the creature, which is confused and does not understand anything. His future version realizes that he is already using his new combat ability. The blue clone of the hero remains still while the monster looks at, not understanding the situation. With that, the true protagonist floats in the air, watching the beast attack his illusion. He then reveals that he is using his new space-time magic, avatar replay, while the monster attacks clone. The young man activates his body skill to counterattack. With his body accelerated to level 3, prepares for a precise counterattack. A blue aura surrounds him, and he appears behind the strength of his feet is so great, ground begins to crack with the energy released. He then explains that the avatar replay magic can create a clone of his past self. With that, clone temporarily takes his place to deceive the enemy in battle. The hero and his clone prepare to attack the monster. Suddenly, several clones appear and attack Beelzebub from all directions at the same time. With swords in hand, both the hero and his clones get ready for the attack. Several clones of the protagonist appear at the same time for the fight. They all advance together in a coordinated attack against the giant monster. With that, he and his clones use the Chaos Meter attack to defeat the enemy. Copies surround the giant monster, which has nowhere to escape from this trap. But in response, Beelzebub launches a powerful poison attack in their direction. The attack hits the clones direct, and they start to dissolve due to the corrosive poison. The true hero manages to dodge, but his copies are all destroyed by the monster. Suddenly, beams of golden light appear in the air around the creature. The monster becomes immobilized, unable to move after those blows from the protagonist. And finally, he defeats that creature. Partner congratulates him and calls him Master Ninja. The young man tells him to stop. Looking ahead, the protagonist says there are now only 2 bosses left in it. With that, he takes a step and another staircase appears again. But suddenly he feels a strong headache and does not understand what is happening. With the intense pain, protagonist loses his balance and his partner screams, startled by the scene. He then falls unconscious to the ground while his stuffed creature screams his name. While he is unconscious, protagonist has some flashbacks from 3 years ago, showing our hero much younger. In this, a little girl appears and with a ball at hand, asks with her arms crossed. The young man seems to disagree with the girl's request. The girl then promises that she won't give up halfway if he agrees. With a cute look, his sister insists once more on the request. Seeing the girl insist, protagonist lets out a sigh and seems to give in. He then questions if she really wants to do ballet and if she is serious. With a huge smile on her, the girl confirms that she does, with great joy. Finally, the older brother agrees and asks her to choose the slip. Very happy with the news, the little one starts jumping with joy on the living room, sitting next to him. The girl starts flipping through the book to choose her pair. Seeing his sister's happy, protagonist gives a gentle and content smile. After that, we see the two of them arriving at a dance studio for her class. Inside, several other girls were stretching, chatting, excited. The girl then appears in her ballet out and says she is ready to start. The other girls celebrate Raya's arrival and say they will do their best. Surprise, the little girl looks towards the door when she hears her name being called. A smile. The girl waves to her brother, who is watching her from the entrance of the room. The young man then waves back and notices how well she is fitting in. Her new friends tease her about her brother being there, and the little girl turns red. Soon after, the dance class begins, and all the students take their positions to practice. First, the girl seems a bit clumsy, trying to imitate the move, but even with she keeps pushing herself to learn the dance. On her, she tries to make the movements as gracefully as she can. Then, with a smile on her face, the girl finally seems to be having real fun. Seeing this, her brother thinks she looks like she is having a great time in class. After class, the girl says goodbye to her new friends. On the way home, the little girl says that the dance class was a lot of fun. She admits that ballet is quite difficult, but she is determined to do her best. The protagonist listens attentively and says that he is happy to hear that her. The little girl then seems to think of something and has a more serious expression. She suddenly stops walking and calls out her brother's name. The girl asks if the slip and the dance classes were very expensive. A smile. The protagonist says it was not anything and that she does not need to worry. But the girl remains worried and holds her bag tighter. Her sister comments since their parents are traveling for a conference. She concludes that all the money must have come from their brother's pocket. Our hero is surprised and realizes that his younger sister has exposed him, but the girl said it is okay, and that he should not worry about it. He then asks if she had a lot of fun in ballet class earlier. Protagonist says he is happy that she found something she really loves to do. With sparkling eyes, the girl looks at her brother and calls his name. In her hand, she holds a small gift box to thank her brother. With a flush, the young girl thanks him for everything he has done for her. Seeing this, protagonist gives a gentle smile to his dear little sister. Suddenly, his little sister hugs him and says she loves him. She then runs ahead and says she is going to show her love for him. The scene cuts to the present, and the hero remembers this with a determined look. We see him mounted on the three-headed beast he summoned in the dungeon. His partner then asks if the young man has finally woken up from his fainting spell. Protagonist asks if he fainted, and the creature says he used too much energy. He thinks about using a potion, but his companion says he has already taken care of it. The entity explains that it healed the wound, but not the hero's mental fatigue. With wide eyes, the young man desperately asks about the deadline. Partner then reveals that there are only 5 hours left until the duel. Protagonist stands up and tells them to go, even though he is very tired. He remembers his sister and promises they will go to her shooting class one more time. The doll silently observes the young man's determination to continue. The entity says there is one boss left, and then the final boss of the dungeon, but he thinks that at this rate, protagonist won't last much longer. With a serious look, the cute creature says it has no choice but to use its last resort. He reached the 80th floor of the castle's dungeon, and we see the mummy of the Acid King, but the monster is immediately crushed by a powerful blue energy, and the creature shatters into countless crystal fragments. Then we see that the attack came from our hero, who used his gravity magic and extends his hand, controlling the power. A system window informs that he defeated the boss, leveled up twice, and his swordsman skill also increased 4 points. After the intense battle, our hero looks completely exhausted and out of breath and can barely stand after so much effort. At that moment, his companion, Cerberus, approaches the protagonist with a smile. The young man thanks his loyal companion for the help and pets the beast's head while the doll watches. Suddenly, a system window appears asking if he wants to use an elixir, and, without thinking twice, the protagonist selects the yes option. With that, a green healing aura completely envelops him, and his energy and wounds are restored in the blink of an eye. Even recovered, the boy still feels tired, and his partner asks he wants to rest a bit after that fight, but the young man declines and says there is no time to wait, as there are only 3 hours left until his sister emerges from the space-time hole. With his goal in mind, he decides to move forward immediately to the top floor. Shortly after, a system notification informs that he has reached the 100th floor, and the castle of the Sky Dungeon is complete. Looking at a cosmic landscape, he says they have finally reached the top, and his partner confirms it is time to face the final boss. Creature explains that after defeating the enemy, he can reach the exact location, as that is where the space-time rift will appear. With a determined look, our hero touches his scarf. His eyes shine with blue energy, and he says he is ready to continue the fight. The young man then walks down a long hallway toward an imposing throne. Sitting on the throne, a giant skeleton is seen surrounded by a sinister aura. A window reveals that he is the Soul Reaper, the god of the underworld, and the dungeon boss. Upon seeing the enemy, protagonist tenses up, and his partner seems very irritated by the situation. Cute creature reveals that this monster does not even exist in the future data. Suddenly, the dungeon boss speaks and wonders why there is only one human there. With that, the protagonist is surprised to find out that this creature can talk. The monster praises him for getting so far alone without anyone's help. At that moment, the Soul Reaper begins to summon a dark weapon with his full magic. In response, the hero materializes his own sword with a shining blue energy. Holding his new weapon, he faces the giant skeleton, preparing for battle. The god of the underworld promises to cast the deadliest curse that exists upon him. The protagonist's partner realizes that the enemy's weapon is in the data. The screen reveals that the weapon is the divine scythe of curse, a staff for illusion magic with negative effects. But the protagonist does not care about the description and says it does not matter how strong it is. With his eyes shining bright, he vows to defeat the monster immediately. Using his enhanced vision, he finds the enemy's weak point in the chest. Then the hero activates body acceleration to level 3 to begin his attack. With incredible speed, the young man charges towards the Soul Reaper. The god of the underworld is surprised by the boy's speed. Protagonist dodges the giant scythe's strike with great agility and continues advancing. The dark blade descends with devastating force and nearly hits the protagonist. The impact of the weapon shatters the ground into pieces, but the hero manages to escape the attack unscathed. After dodging, he jumps over the monster in search of an opening to retaliate. The young man then concentrates his blue energy in his hand, preparing for a counterattack. His target is the shining core in the giant skeleton's chest to end the fight. He leaps into the air and prepares a devastating blow at the enemy's weak point. His sword tries to hit its target, but the monster defends itself well. A massive burst of purple energy erupts. The strike does not seem to have the intended effect. To the protagonist's surprise, the god of the underworld is still standing and looks dazed, preparing for a new attack. Then the giant skeleton swings its scythe and unleashes a powerful wave of energy toward the young man. The monster delivers a powerful blow against the protagonist. The Soul Reaper realizes it attacked a cop and the true protagonist. With that, the true hero appears right above the enemy, ready to deliver a fatal blow from above. At that moment, he activates his viability and shouts the name of the spell to summon paralyzing chains. Blue chains appear out of nowhere and wrap around the giant monster's body, restraining its movement. With the sword in hand, the young man prepares to seize the opportunity and defeat the boss once and for all. But the god of the underworld mocks him and says that a curse like that won't work on a divine being. Suddenly, the chains of energy begin to crack and break under the immense force of the Reaper. Seeing this, protagonist is shocked, as he did not expect his ability to fail like that. The chains shatter and the creature easily breaks free from the magic. With its red eyes glowing, the creature glares at the protagonist, preparing for a counterattack. At that moment, purple energy binds the hero, and his partner screams his name desperately. Upon seeing the young man in danger, the powerful blow surprises the protagonist. However, before he could be hit, he narrowly dodges. His hand reaches out as he falls uncontrollably. After dodging in fear, the hero regains his composure and defends himself against the attack from a large skeleton wielding a giant scythe. The monster taunts him for dodging twice and boosts its confidence in its speed. The creature then calls him an inferior being for not having wings and needing crawl. With that, the skeleton says it will attack his legs first to immobilize. The enemy then activates an ability called Cursed Dimension. Shocked, the young man feels the world around him begin to twist completely. At that moment, everything turns upside down, and he starts to fall upward toward the boss. In the inverted sky, they face each other. The protagonist wonders again what happened, and the monster smiles maliciously. Looking down, he sees the dungeon floor cracking and falling. Ground break, and he laments having gone up without floors only to plummet down. Now the skeleton warns that it won't move and prepares an attack with the scythe. Protagonist panics upon seeing a monster smiling maliciously upside down. With that, he summons a blue energy dagger and prepares for the counterattack. The skeleton strike collide the young man's dagger, creating a huge explosion. He then says, "You can't make an omelet without breaking egg," and shouts to blow up. The explosion throws him back, and he continues to fall in the inverted sky of the dimension. At that moment, protagonist realizes there is a wall and that he is trapped in the trap. Without hesitation, protagonist uses his blade to anchor himself to the wall. The wall broke. He leans on the floating debris with a determined look. Watching the scene, the skeleton monster is surprised by the boy's unexpected action. The hero faces his enemy and starts to think to understand the situation he has gotten in. He then realizes that this whole fall is just an illusion created by his opponent. The young man believes he has fallen for the spell and wonders how he can break this magic. With a focused look, he shakes his head, but the skeleton does not give him time. Pairs another attack, his dark energy. The monster then opens its mouth and shoots a powerful beam of pink energy at the hero. Pink energy beam barely misses, grazes his leg. The dark energy then clings to his leg like a sort of curse. In that, the monster warns that he will be its newest test subject for magic. The creature explains that the resentment of the dead will slowly corrode his body. Then the skeleton asks, what will end the protagonist first? Will it be the hatred of his own kind, or something much more powerful, or will it be his powerful scythe from the underworld defeats him once for all? The protagonist then realizes he needs to get out of that dimensional space, but wonders how he can do that if he is trapped and immobilized by magic. The skeleton does not give him time and is already preparing a powerful attack with his giant scythe. With an evil look, the monster bids farewell to the human and unleashes his final blow. The scythe releases a massive wave of energy towards our hero. Feeling the pain, he wonders if it is all over for him in that place. In that moment, he remembers the image of his sister calling for him. With his last ounce of strength, he whispers his sister's name. The monster skeleton then smiles maliciously, ready to finish the fight. Suddenly, chains of blue energy bind a skeleton that does not understand anything. Our hero is completely shocked by the unfolding event and does not know what happened. Looking back, he tries to figure out where that unexpected help came from. To his surprise, it was his cute partner who used magic to trap the monster. His partner says that this was his last option to save the young man's life. Upon hearing this, partner begins to shine intensely. Very strong blue light. A huge surge of purple energy explodes. The attack does not appear to have the desired impact. Blinding wave of energy surges forth. The blue light blinds everything around in the dungeon. Eyes like the protagonists appear. A hooded man wielding an energy sword appears in front of the protagonist. In a different voice, the mysterious figure begins to speak calmly. He says it would be a problem if the protagonist ended up dying in that place. With that, his future self casts a powerful spell to rewind everything around him. Our protagonist is shocked and feels time moving in a strange way. He then realizes that time is flowing back and the monster's attack is retreating. Suddenly, everything changes and the protagonist finds himself falling into a bizarre space. With his sword, he strikes an invisible barrier that starts to break apart in the air. Floating in the air, protagonist wonders, what is this place? Soon after, the arena's floor begins to crack, completely shatter. Large pieces of the dungeon float through the space and everything seems to be rebuilding itself. The hero then lands safely and faces the powerful skeletal monster for him. Both the protagonist and the creature are very confused by the chain. The enemy wonders if that was a divine level spell used against. Suddenly, a mysterious figure lands on the ground next to our protagonist. It was his older self, who says it has been a while since he looked like that. The monster gets angry at the scene and shouts, the show's introduction is finally over. The skeletal monster then releases a purple energy and summons his magical creation. From the energy, several bizarre angels with wicked smiles on their faces emerge, facing an army. The future version says that the monsters are class or higher. With that, his older self tells the boy to get up because he will take care of the minion. Our protagonist is shocked by the order to fight the boss alone. He then says that the enemy is of divine level and too strong to be defeated. But his older self says that he now understands and controls the space-time magic. With a smile, he ends by saying that in the end, they are the same person. Hearing the word, the young hero seems to finally understand what he needs to do. With determination, he agrees plan and prepares for the great battle. At that moment, the entity says it will tell him the attack plan to defeat the enemy. Two then prepare to fight, while the monster watches them from a distance. Creature points in their direction and orders its army to attack without mercy. With that, all the black angels fly toward the two. Suddenly, a huge burst of blue energy hits the monster direct. With that, the duo charges ahead with everything they have got to start the battle against the enemy. With a smile, the older version faces the horde of black angels in front of him. He then uses the gravity field to trap all the enemies in the air. As a result, the black angels become paralyzed, unable to move or attack. Floating in the air, the entity taunts the monsters to come and fight him. Then, he challenges all the minions to attack at once. Meanwhile, our hero advances with his sword to attack the main boss. On the way, he needs to dodge some minions that manage to escape. Even so, the young man does not stop and keeps running towards the skeletal monster. His future self then uses an acceleration field to help with the run. As a result, protagonist gains incredible speed and thanks his partner for the help. Approaching, the monster calls him a lower and repugnant life form, but with a determined look, the hero tells the enemy to the bucket. The boss then activates the cursed dimension to try to stop the young man's attack. However, the hero says he has seen this technique before and won't fall for it again. With that, the protagonist breaks through the barrier and the monster is shocked. shocked. His eyes shine brightly and he charges forward with a cry of determination. Furious, the enemy calls him an inferior and insolent being for challenging him this way. The young man decides that indirect attacks are a waste of time and needs to get straight point. So he plans to attack the monster directly, and soon the two clash swords. His sword collides with the creature's energy, creating large bursts. That moment, the hero uses the powerful skill called Meter of Chaos. The strike hits hard and the monster screams in pain from the impact of the attack, but the enemy retaliates and uses the Blade of Curses to finish off the antagonist. The attack hits the young man squarely, and he screams as he feels the powerful blow to his body. With the impact, he is thrown back and starts bleeding heavily from his mouth. This moment, the monster sees several apparitions of agony and does not understand anything. With this technique, the hero can share and reduce the damage he received. Even injured, the young man charges with everything he has for one last desperate attack. With a war cry and shining eyes, he vows that he will defeat the enemy. The hero strikes the monster with a devastating blow, causing a huge explosion. He charged again, catching the Soul Reaper by surprise. Put every little bit of his strength into his next move, managing to drive his sword into the heart of the creature. The Soul Reaper let out a sharp scream, and for a moment Haruto believed he had won, but then it twisted its face into a smile that sent a chill down his spine. He realized with a shock that he did not have a heart, and before he could process that, the creature cut him in half. His future self shouted his name in alarm. The Soul Reaper laughed at them, thinking that its weakness was something as simple as its heart, taunted them, revealing that one of the special abilities of the underworld god is to pretend to have a weak deceive their enemy. The creature mocked how foolish the humans were. Haruto's divided body fell to the ground as the Soul Reaper laughed triumph, commanding its swarm of little monsters to advance. It mocked his future self, pointing out that he was the only one left. Stammering in shock, Haruto's future self declared that it was impossible and desperately wondered out loud what could be the true weakness. The Soul Reaper roared that a god has no weakness. It boosted that if it did, it would be something as untouchable as the very concept of its existence. Forbidden crown of hate. With that, it ordered its monsters to attack future Haruto, declaring that there would be no pleas for mercy. Future Haruto remained surprisingly calm, asking his past self if he had heard that, because now they knew what to do. Suddenly, the real Haruto appeared right behind the Soul Reaper, his sword pointed directly at his head. He confirmed that he had received the message. The Soul Reaper spun around completely bewildered, shouting that it could not be possible. After all, he had just cut him in half a moment ago. Haruto explained that what he cut was just a copy. When the Soul Reaper attacked his torso, he used the avatar replay to create a clone and send it forward, while the real Haruto had been lying on the ground the whole time. Still not understand, the Reaper shouted that Haruto should have died from a direct hit of his divine power. Naruto admitted that it was definitely a fatal blow. However, his future self activated a time-space ability called Rewind on him just before the attack hit. Time literally rewound for Haruto just before the moment of his death. His future self added that the ability was incredibly complex and could only be used once on the same person. Luckily for them, the plan had worked perfectly. The Soul Reaper charged at Haruto, but his future self unleashed the level 78 stop chain to bind the creature. He then asked Haruto if they should prepare for the grand finale. Haruto turned to the Soul Reaper, confirming that he had mentioned the crown above his head was his weak point. Your future self intervened, promising that they would completely obliterate. He added that they would crush that scary head into pieces. Naruto took a deep breath, and a memory of his little sister thanking him for everything and saying she loved him flashed through his mind. The memories flooded, boosting his power. With his renewed determination, he unleashed all his strength. In a single powerful strike, cut off the Soul Reaper's head. He then leaped into the air and, moving with incredible speed, sliced its head into countless small fragments. The head of the Soul Reaper completely disappeared, and its body collapsed to the ground. Finally defeated, when it fell, all the little monsters vanished along with. Naruto landed back on his feet just as a message from the system appeared, announcing that he had defeated the underworld god, the Soul Reaper. He earned 120,000 experience points and 35 million credits. He turned to his future self and informed him that the target had been eliminated. At that exact moment, a staircase appeared, leading to the top floor. His future self said it was finally time to go, and Naruto agreed, walking up to him. Naruto then studied his older self and asked with a hint of worry if this was really how he would look when he got older. His future self jokingly threatened to hit him. Naruto quickly clarified that he just meant it would have been nice if his future self had helped from the start. As they began to climb the stairs, his future self remembered he was just a last resort and that the situation was more complicated than it seemed. He interrupted the conversation, saying he did not have much time before the space-time rift opened, and shook Naruto's hand firmly, seriously saying they needed to hurry. They climbed to the top floor of the castle's dungeon, which was surrounded by thick fog. His future self immediately looked up and shouted to Naruto, who was there. They both watched as the sky began to crack and then explode with energy. Floating in the middle of all the chaos was a little girl. Their sister was laughing. His future self told him that the rift would remain connect to their world for another 9 minutes 48 seconds, so they should take their time and not rush. As his future self floated toward the rift, he suddenly remembered something and activated the accelerated field ability, creating energy circles as he ascended. Haruto called out and they both ran up. As they approached the rift, Haruto shouted for Raya. She opened her eye and reached out as he shouted that he was right there. But your future self told you to stay calm, explaining that the inside of the wormhole was disconnected from the laws of cause and effect in the world, which meant that only the magic of space-time would work. Your future self then flew into the hole, telling Haruto that he would use his magic to push Raya. Haruto needed to be ready to catch, positioning himself behind Raya. Your future self concentrated all his space-time power in his hand and pushed with all his strength to pull her out. Raya got close to the edge of the hole, and Haruto strained to see her as his vision blurred, called out to him, referring to him as her older brother. But then, to his horror, the hole began to close. Shocked, Haruto shouted to his future self, asking what was happening. His future self shouted back, just as surprised that it was too early for the hole to be closing. Panic began to set in as he saw how quickly it was shrinking. It was dangerously close to being caught. In a desperate move, future self used every bit of his power to the hole open, shouting to to pull Ria in. Naruto shouted back a determined yes, and used his own space-time magic to pull her toward. As Ria got closer, his future self struggled to prevent the hole from collapsing. Your future self warned that if Ria's body got stuck in the hole that was closing, she would be torn apart, and even if she managed to get out, she would die from the fall. Could not catch her. Haruto focused intensely, responding that he understood. When Ria finally cleared the hole and started to fall, she reached out her hand to him, and he reached back. He managed to grab her hand and pull her into a tight hug. Then he shouted for his future self to hurry back, but there was no response. Confused, Haruto asked what was wrong and urged him to hurry. His future self, however, just smiled and said this was where they had to say goodbye. Haruto, completely confused, asked what he was talking about. His future self explained that he had reached his limit and could no longer maintain his form. He added that he had used all the Chronos factor he had stored inside him with that last feat and did not have enough power to return from where he came. Haruto tried to say something, but his future self interrupted, saying his name serious. He told Haruto that he had not been a very good student, always complaining, making silly mistakes, and just when it seemed like he was growing, his emotions would take over and lead to more mistakes. But despite all that, he had no regrets in fighting with him, because Haruto was such a human and kind-hearted person. Your future self then told you that the hole in time and space would never open again, making this your final goodbye. Devastated, Haruto shouted for him to wait, insisting that this could not be happening, but his future self placed all his hopes in Haruto, telling him to save their world and his place in it. He gritted his teeth in pain. Haruto agreed with tears in his eyes, promising he would take responsibility. His future self chuckled softly, reminding him that it was a promise. Turning to Ria, he reassured her, saying she was safe now, calling her a little lady. Right. However, asked if he could also be her brother. The question caught his future self off guard, and he remembered how warm, loved, and sweet Ria had been with him. He smiled gently at her and welcomed her to the house. Then, when the hole in time and space finally closed, future version of Haruto disappeared along with it. When the hole completely vanished, Haruto clutched his chest in agony and let out a loud scream, mourning the loss of someone so incredibly important. In that moment, Haruto achieved a great, but also suffered a deep loss. The next day, after cleaning the dungeon of the Sky Castle from the Tokyo Tower, Haruto entered his classroom in the Adventure Cultivation Agency division. He was shocked when all the girls in the room ran up to him excitedly, saying they had been waiting for him. Confused, he saw that even the senior girls were there. One of the girls approached him and, speaking for the Victims of Hilga Association, expressed her deepest thanks, with all of them showing their gratitude. The girls started talking all at once about how relieved they were that the repugnant sexual aggressor Hilu had been beaten to, and how they finally sleep without crying. One girl pointed at, declaring him their savior, and asking who could have given him the nickname God of Plague. Awkward, Haruto stammered for them to stop, thinking to himself that all he wanted was a calm, peaceful life. Suddenly, someone else approached him, and he was surprised to see it was Yuzuki. She bowed and said that, as the representative of the student council, she wanted to apologize for what had happened to the president. He told her that she did not need to worry about it, since it had nothing to do with, but she insisted that she could not just let it go, especially since she was about to become the new student council president. Looking him directly in the eye, Yuzuki asked if he would be interested in helping the school internally, which left him confused. She explained that she was recruiting for the student council and wanted him to guide the student as the leader of the council's magic security team. The whole class got excited about the offer, but Haruto declined, saying he was fine where he was and would pass, which shocked Yuzuki. She then took his hand and begged, saying she would do anything if he would just agree. Rin could not believe Yuzuki was being so direct with Haruto, and was stunned, stuttering his name. Kem tried to comfort Rin, saying it was okay. One of the other girls reminded Yuzuki that class was about to start, and gently pulled her away from Haruto. Before leaving, Yuzuki shouted they would continue the conversation at lunch, ordered him to stay in the class, citing her new authority as student council president. Naruto just sighed and scratched his head, completely exasperated. During lunch break, Haruto was on the roof, sitting on a bench while checking the system. He saw that his level was 98, his rank, and the system was recommending that he level up to a higher adventurer rank. His skills included swordsmanship at level 64 and space-time magic at level 82, with high stats overall. He also noticed that he had 5 new spells and thought to himself that stats like these, he felt invincible. It made sense after all the enemies he had taken down. He was surprised to see that his total credit reached 43 million, a fortune no normal high school student should have. While he took a bite of his burger, he heard the sound of people running to the roof, and Zuki abruptly entered the scene, asking loudly where he was. The girls started to search, but they could not find him anywhere. Frustrated, and Zuki angrily reminded the others that she had specifically told Haruto to wait in his class, deciding to check the gym next. They all left the roof without ever noticing him calmly eating while watching them from above. After jumping down, Haruto knew he needed to come up with a plan to handle situations like this, or his life would get much harder. He then turned from the bench to ask his future self for advice, but when he looked, he remembered that his future self had left. Painful memory of his absence flooded back to him. After school, Haruto returned to his apartment, bag of food, climbed the stairs and typed code on his apartment door. When he opened it, he was surprised to hear Raya shout that he was late and that she had been waiting a long time. She then welcomed him home. He smiled and replied, "Your older brother is home." Raya proudly showed him the dinner she had prepared, declaring it was a homemade meal from her sweet little sister, which impressed him. Then, she noted the bag in her hand and asked if he had bought anything at the convenience store. He looked at the bag, realizing she had it up out of habit, and gently scolded, saying he should try not to buy unnecessary things on his own. He nodded, admitting she was right. Then, she reminded him that they would be living together from now on, and needed to save money. Surprised by this, he agreed, promising he would do just that. Raya approached, smiled softly, and welcomed him home once again. He was surprised for a moment when the thought of his future self welcoming Raya home crossed his mind. He smiled and said to her, "It is good to be home." Placed the plastic bag on the table when Rhea suddenly remembered something. Before they had dinner, the two went over to the family photo. Raya thanked their parents for raising them and asked them to keep watching over them, which made him smile warmly at his little sister. Then R noted the scarf she had made for him. She could not believe he had for so long, and he replied, replied, "Of course I did." She remembered it was June, in the middle of summer, but he jokingly said he gets cold easily, as she already knew. After he changed clothes, they both sat at the table. Raya proudly presented the meal as her own home food. He smiled, thanked her for the food, and took a bite. She anxiously asked how it was, and if he liked. He said it was absolutely delicious. Raya still could not believe he was really back and asked if he was truly home. He reassured her, saying she is truly home. He also said he had already sent all the necessary paperwork to the government office to inform them his little sister was indeed alive. She thanked him and mentioned that she had lost years and really needed to catch up on her study. Haruto added that this also included her dance academy. Worried, she asked if they could afford it. He told her not to worry about money, not now and never again, even in the distant future. He teased her, saying she could go to dance class, even after becoming a grandma. Raya laughed and asked what he meant by that. She then looked at the teddy bear and asked if it was true they owed everything to his future self. Naruto confirmed, saying they had a lot to be thankful for. He then remembered the final request from his future self to save the world, which made him look at the teddy bear and wonder how he should begin. At that moment, Raya remembered that she had something in her pocket. She recalled that it was already inside clothes when he rescued her. She pulled out a small, shiny cube and asked if he knew what it was. Haruto was surprised to see that it was a message cube. As soon as he activated it, the cube emitted a bright light, and his teddy bear, now possessed by the essence of his future self, appeared. Completely shocked, his future self began to speak through the teddy bear, saying that if Haruto was seeing that, it meant he was no longer in this world. He assumed that Haruto was probably feeling lost and wondering how to save the world now that he was gone. Naruto listened in disbelief as his future self confidently explained that as the strongest unparalleled warrior, made preparations in case something like this happened. Then, with a touch of error, his future self asked if Haruto agreed that he was totally amazing and told him to feel free to praise. Haruto could not help that his future self should not be so full of himself, even in a recorded message. His future self then became serious, telling Haruto that he would transfer a letter from the future version 2 for his story. He asked Haruto to use this to save the world and called him the savior, asking if he understood. The message cube then shut down, transferring the letter to become a space-time wizard version 2 for its storage. The system displayed a message from his future self, reminding him not to relax just because he was not around to watch over him anymore. Seeing his future self in the system lifted his spirits and he smiled. Noticing his smile, asked if people were really calling him a savior these days and commented on how incredible that sounded. He just shrugged, saying it was nothing, just the result of various different things happening. Meanwhile, at the Adventurers Guild headquarters, a meeting was underway on the top floor where the 7 sages, all ranked adventurers, were gathered. The head of the Minato branch, Kurogane, also known as Iron, addressed the group. He suggested they move on to the next agenda item, the elimination of the Chaos Dragon at the Nano Train Yard, the unauthorized entry into the synthesis facility of the Shinjuku branch, which was restricted to adventurers of a certain level or higher, and the unauthorized invasion of the Sky Castle in Tokyo Tower. He emphasized that these 3 criminal acts, all occurring in the past few days, were most likely carried out by the same person, and that they needed to find the culprit immediately. 5th sage, known as the King of Kings, Tantalus, responded by asking if the Sky Castle had been properly checked, as it could be as difficult as an S-ranked dungeon. The 2nd wise one, Platina, also known as the Messenger of the Oracle, asked if a single person really managed to invade a dungeon like that. The 6th wise one, Miramas, known as the Exalted Magic Sword, replied that it seemed impossible. 3rd wise one, Kind, remained silent during the discussion. 1st wise one, also known as the Elemental Omni, commented that these actions could be seen as a direct challenge to the authority of the Adventure Guild, which he found quite interesting. 4th wise one, Siren, also known as the Psycho Witch, laughed and wondered what kind of darkness the person might be hiding. Finally, the 7th wise one, Illuria, known as Vision X, announced that a target for observation had been acquired. Kurogane then addressed the group, saying that he believed all 7 wise ones understood the gravity of the situation. He proposed that as soon as they found the unknown adventurer, they should recruit him into the group's executive team, prepare him to be a warrior in the next war in another world. With that, Kurogane declared the meeting of the 7 wise ones closed. The next day, on a quiet street, a mother and her son were happily walking together. The mother got distracted by some beautiful flowers by the roadside, while the child, enchanted by a bright blue butterfly, began to chase it without his mother noticing. When the child ran into the street, a truck came speeding towards him, and the driver shouted in shock upon seeing him in his path. The mother heard the truck's horn and, in a moment of horror, saw her daughter standing in the middle of the road. She ran toward her son, but it was already too late. The truck was about to hit her. The child's balloons floated into the air as the tragedy was about to happen. Then, in the blink of an eye, he appeared. Naruto was standing in front of the mother, holding the child safely in his arms. The mother was in shock, unable to process what had just happened. When she confirmed it was really her daughter, she ran to them, tears streaming down her face. Haruto kindly asked the child if she was scared and gently told her not to worry, because she was safe now. Haruto carefully set the child down, and the little girl thanked him. Her mother immediately hugged her, exclaiming her relief that her daughter was safe. Naruto smiled, thinking about how he managed to save the child at the last moment. When he saw her for the first time, feared he would not be able to, but with his space-time magic, he did. Although he had to sacrifice the girl's balloon and his own drink in the process, it was a small price to pay to save a life. He clenched his fist, feeling a sense of satisfaction for using his powers for good. The mother looked at him and said she was coming to thank him in person, but Haruto declined, saying it was not necessary. She insisted, saying that an act like that could not be ignored and that he should at least say his name. However, Haruto politely refused, saying he preferred that she just forget everything because he did not want to stand out more than he already did. Picking up his backpack, he told him he had to run. His mom yelled for him to wait, but he was already taking off at high speed, knowing he would be late if he did not hurry. A moment later, he arrived at the high school division of the Adventure Cultivation Agency. He jumped from one building to another until he landed safely on the roof of his class. Looking down, he saw the student council gathered at the entrance, asking each other if they had seen Naruto. He sighed in frustration and went to his classroom, but he could not ignore the whispers and stares from his classmates. He felt strange, thinking that he did not even need to use his time control ability to know he was being watched like a hawk. Meanwhile, Ren was watching him from the side, feeling like he was drifting further away. It was just like that time she bumped into him after leaving the Adventurers Guild. She remembered a moment branch of the Metropolitan Government Office in Tsuko. At the Adventurers Guild, there, she introduced herself as a student from the Cultivation Agency School in the Nakano District and reported that she had finished a Class B dungeon exploration. The man at the counter thanked him for his hard work. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly asked if a student named Haruto attended his school. Surprised, she said she knew a student by that name. The man explained that Takamine from the Weapons Synthesis Lab had created a new weapons synthesis theory based on something called Kuju theory. He added that when he asked Takamine about it, Takamine mentioned that a nano student had given him the clue that helped him develop. The man commented that all of this sounded quite unbelievable. Ren stared at Haruto, wondering how far he was planning to go. After class, the teacher dismissed them in the morning, reminding them about the exchange student who would join them next week. During the lunch break, Haruto was back on the roof, reviewing the messages his future self had left for him. One of the messages resonated with his future self, advising him to first focus on improving his skills as a swordsman. In the end, the message said that space-time magic is just a type of auxiliary support magic. His true talents lay in his sword, and if he wanted to become a great space-time wizard like him, he would first have to live by the sword. The message concluded by saying that the time would come when he would understand why he was telling him this. For now, that was all. The message then disappeared, and Haruto lay on the bench thinking about how his future self had always been enigmatic. He wished his future self would just explain things more clearly. Elsewhere, someone powerful appeared at their school. The man used his stealthy steps and quick stride skills to magically shorten the distance as he moved. Haruto suddenly felt shocked when he sensed the presence and looked back to see a man standing on the roof. Immediately, Haruto pulled his sword and stood up to confront the man, demanding to know who he was. The man, none other than Kiryu Muramasa, the sixth sage and exalted magical swordsman, asked Haruto if he was that person, claimed he wanted to borrow his strength. Muramasa then looked at him seriously and said, "The destruction of the world is almost upon us." Haruto realized he had not sensed Muramasa's presence until he was right in front of him. This was not an ordinary person. Muramasa was not just some random guy. Haruto then asked Muramasa if he really meant the destruction of the world and what exactly he was talking about. Muramasa replied that it was exactly as it seemed. In the near future, everything Haruto cherished would be reduced to nothing and disappear. This shocked Haruto, who immediately thought of Raya, pointed his sword at Muramasa, saying he could not just believe a claim like that, especially since he did not even know who Muramasa was or what kind of person he might be. He added that Miram simply appeared out of nowhere and started making what seemed to be threat, reminding him of someone in particular, his future self, whom he did not like very much. Haruto then declared that he would act based on his own thought and make his own decision. Muramasa smiled at this and took a picture, asking Haruto if he still felt the same after seeing it. Naruto lost his patience when he realized the picture was of Raya practicing her dance. In a fit of rage, he unleashed a powerful aura, which surprised Muramasa. It was not just any fighting spirit, it was an abnormal one. However, Muramasa recognized that Haruto had the potential of a true swordsman. He assured Haruto that he only took her as part of a background check, had not touched his sister. Miram then drew his sword, swearing in the name of his master that he had no further intention. Quickly walked toward Haruto, adding that if it was necessary to fight to convince him, he would gladly accept. This only made Haruto more irritated. He told Muramasa that he had crossed a line. Muramasa stepped back, warning Haruto that whatever happened next, he should not regret it later. As they prepared to fight, Muramasa used his killing intent ability. Haruto was shocked to see that there was no Chronos factor around Muramasa, which meant he would not be able to see the flow of time. Noticing Haruto's silence, Muram asked if something was wrong and said that whether he was ready or not, he was coming. Muram then vanished in a blur and reappeared right in front of Haruto, shocking him. Muramasa explained that his killing intent did not mean revealing his intent, but the opposite. It meant killing his own aura or presence. Muramasa then swung his sword at Haruto, who barely managed to jump in the air and dodge the attack. Haruto realized that Muramasa's killing intent was removing the Chronos factor from his immediate area. Haruto asked Muramasa why he was explaining how his abilities worked, joking if he was some kind of dumb villain from a manga. Muramasa calmly replied that he was explaining because he could still win even revealing his secret. He explained that by eliminating his presence, he could always take the initiative against his opponent. Suddenly, Muramasa appeared behind Haruto without him noticing. When Haruto turned to face him, Muramasa swung his sword and managed to cut him. Muramasa smiled thinking he had won. Then to his shock, Haruto's figure slowly disappeared. It was a clone created with his ability avatar replay. The real Haruto appeared behind Muramasa and brought down his sword, but Muramasa bent his body in time to dodge the attack, asking what was happening. Frustrated for missing the strike, Haruto watched as Muramasa jumped back to create some distance. Still confused, Muramasa realized that he definitely should have cut Haruto and wondered if it was more than just an after him. When Muramasa got up, 2 buttons fell from his coat due to the force of Haruto's previous attack. Seizing the moment, Haruto used his body ability to rush toward Muramasa at high speed. When he swung his sword, Muramasa, sensing the power Haruto had, smiled thinking this was getting interesting. Muramasa blocked Haruto's sword with his own, and the force between their weapons sent sparks flying. Muramasa looked at Haruto, asking what he would do next. Haruto, knowing he could not rely on seeing the flow of time, decided to try a different technique. He gently pushed Muramasa's sword and activated his stop chain ability, which immobilized Muramasa and his sword. Muramasa was shocked to find himself restrained. Haruto gathered some of his power in his, and Muramasa was even more surprised when Haruto crouched to the side, threw a punch using his Chronofist ability. Dazed for a moment, Muramasa dropped his sword and managed to activate his steel body ability. Haruto's punch hit Muramasa, causing a loud explosion between them and sending Muramasa flying. Although he remained unharmed, Muramasa marveled at the power of Haruto's attack. Realizing it was not just a random, he then stared intently at Haruto, recognizing him as an awakened one. Haruto cursed in frustration concentration. Realizing that even his last attack had not worked, he was confused when Muramasa suddenly suggested they stop. Muramasa then calmly walked towards Haruto, sincerely apologizing for what he had said about his sister. He bowed deep, begging for forgiveness for his intentional transgression and swearing he would never do something like that again. Haruto was surprised and asked what was happening. Muramasa simply picked up his sword and said he was leaving now. Naruto shouted behind him, demanding to know why he was deciding this on his own and insisting that their match was not over yet. Muram replied that, of course, this was not resolved and that they should continue at his school. Haruto, more confused than ever, asked what he meant by his school. Muram explained that Naruto had a unique talent but was still very weak and had not reached the level that Muramasa wanted him to be at. He suggested that they learn the mysteries of the sword at his school to help Haruto become stronger. Naruto then remembered the message from his future self, telling him that his true talent lay in the sword and that if he wanted to become a great space-time mage, he would first have to live by the sword. Haruto reminded Muramasa that he still could not trust him that easily. Muram agreed, pointed out he was definitely stronger than Haruto now, asking if that was not reason enough. Muram then told Haruto that he would be waiting for him at the school before disappearing. Confused, Haruto felt something in his pocket, pulled out an exchange permit between his school and Azabu school. He realized that Muramasa must have slipped this into his pocket during the fight. Understanding that Muram was referring to Sabu as his school, Haruto thought furiously that Muramasa definitely had a way of getting under his skin. Meanwhile, Muramasa was at the school entrance adjusting his jacket, thought to himself that Naruto was truly special. Before the 7 sages had the chance to use Naruto as a disposable pawn, Muramasa was determined to train him well. When Haruto joined the 7 sages, he would help him take them down and seize their power. Muramasa silently promised to ruin Kurogani's plan. On the roof, Naruto examined the exchange student permit. It stated that the goal was to enhance the true strength ventures from each school. The duration was listed as 1st to July 13, 2054. The enrollment requirement included being a student enrolled in a school affiliated the Adventurer Cultivation Agency, with student council members receiving a category treatment and advantages in the exchange school. While he was reading, Yuzuki suddenly burst onto the roof, shouting that she had found him and that today he would definitely join their student council. Haruto stood up, saying her timing was perfect, and casually told Yuzuki he was in. She froze in shock, surprised that he actually agreed to join the student council. A week later, at the Azabu branch of the Adventurer Cultivation Agency, Haruto was walking with Yuzuki. She expressed how impressed she was, not only because he had joined the student council, also because he wanted to go with her to Azabu school as an exchange student. He replied that it was expected as a member of the student council, although in reality, he was more motivated by the level benefit mentioned in the document. Yuzuki explained that Azabu school was known for training many ranked adventurers and was considered the best institution for education and training in Japan. She added that it was a super elite school that required a magical deviation value of over 70 for admission. Before entering the building, Yuzuki turned back to him excitedly, encouraging him to do his best not to fall behind. He hesitated in agreement, feeling a bit overwhelmed as they entered, found themselves in a huge hall. Yuzuki suggested they greet the council president first. As they walked through the lounge, Haruto noticed that the students inside were looking at them curious, wondering where these two strangers had come from, but he decided not to worry about it to his own pace. And Zu, noticing his discomfort, stammered, reassuring him that there was no need to be afraid because she was right there with him. He agreed, could not help but wonder if Yuzuki would really be okay in this place. On the 20th floor, they arrived at the office of the council president, and Zuki pointed while Haruto knocked on the door. When they entered, Muramasa was sitting in the middle of the room waiting for them. He introduced himself as the president of the school council, leaving Naruto incredulous. This was really Muramasa's school. Muramasa stood up and welcomed them to Azabu school, explaining that amid these times when wizards were in their golden age, the school specialized strictly in the cultivation of fencing. Even within the Adventurer Cultivation Agency, they were unique. He added that instead of magical duels, sword duels were held, and during the student exchange program, he hoped they would rise to the top of the school's ranking through the duels. Haruto was shocked when Muramasa pointed directly at. Before he could react, Yuzuki stammered, telling Muramasa to wait a minute, insisting that none of that should be part of the student exchange program activities. However, Haruto asked Muramasa to fight him again if anticipated, leaving Yuzuki confused and stammering, asking what he meant by again. Muram explained that the student who reaches first place in the ranking earns the right to challenge the strongest individual in Azabu school. Naruto, excited about this, declared that it was exactly what he wanted to hear, and that he would rise to the top and defeat Muramasa as quickly as possible so he could go home early, shocking Yuzuki and leaving her in a panic. Haruto told Muramasa that his only complaint was the previous fight had ended halfway, and once they sorted that out, he would not have any reason to stay. Muram replied that he had no problem with that, and that the school respected any swordsman aiming for the top, regardless of their attitude or stand. Muramasa then opened a system and provided them with the EDs of the school's student and the class schedule, explaining that with this, they could access the school's facilities and enjoying more advantages as members of the student council. Haruto saw that his adventure level in the Swordmaster course was 98, placing him in 395th place out of 14,000 in the Azabu school rank, giving him access to greater privilege. He wondered if the ranking system worked the same way as Ninkan, contemplating whether he should challenge higher-ranked students one after another climb quick. After sorting everything out, Muramasa wished them success and said goodbye. As they walked down the hallway, Yuzuki exclaimed that the situation was outrageous, asking how she was supposed to aim for the top of the school's rank. Haruto agreed, telling her that there was no need for the newly appointed Madam President to do that in the first. Then he thought of the fastest way to rise in the rank, considering places where high-ranking students might gather, such as special auditorium, student council room, dual arena, the martial arts club building, classroom building, cafeteria, the event hall, and even the council president's office. With a determined smile, Haruto decided to visit those places. A moment later, in the cafeteria on the second floor of the Adventurer Cultivation motivation aid. A crowd of students gathered to eat, and Zook asked forgot to have breakfast that morning, to which he simply replied that he did. Suddenly, a virtual robot appeared next to them, welcoming them and asking if they were exchange students from another part of Japan. The robot explained that the school's motto is, "Your breakfast determines your whole day," and encouraged all the students to have a hearty breakfast. If they did not have the chance to eat at home, they were welcome to enjoy themselves here. He noticed that a holographic maid was scanning their student and making targeted announcements for them, and Zook, surprised by the luxurious menu, asked if everything was free. Marveling at how well funded the schools really were, she picked up a pair of tweezers and declared it was time for a thorough inspection. He encouraged her to continue, and she started examining the food, delighted by the total automation and the perfectly balanced menu of nutrients and calories. She exclaimed that this was the cafeteria of her dream, the one she had only imagined until now, and insisted that they needed to adopt this system at their own school immediately. As he watched the eccentricity of the new student council president, he remembered his true reason for coming to the cafeteria. Suddenly, a loud crash caught his attention, followed by the voice of a man mocking that someone had something they did not deserve. Looking to the side, he saw a group of men harassing a lone student. The student nervously asked them to stop. The leader of the group mocked, saying it would be a waste on a weakling like him while raising a sword. The student begged them to give it back, but the leader shouted at him to shut up, claiming that this was his punishment for sitting in the Rado faction's seat without permission. Just as Haruto suspected, bullies were present even here. He knew that no matter how elite a school is, there will always be people like that, and teachers can't be everywhere. School cafeterias were common spots for this kind of behavior, but he felt lucky to find them right away. This meant he could deal with them sooner. The leader mocked the student, saying he did not have permission to enter the cafeteria unless his ranking was at least in the double digits, and sarcastically asked if he did not know that rule. The student stammered that the seating should not matter in the cafeteria, but the leader grabbed, shouting that it did, calling him a god of plagues with no magical ability, a phrase that surprised him. The leader then shoved the student to the ground, and the crowd laughed at the scene, which made Haruto decide it was time to intervene. The leader smiled ironically, taunting the student by saying that giving him the sword would be like throwing pearls, so he would. One of the other bullies mentioned the sword looked valuable, and that if they took it to the guild shop, the Redo faction's budget would increase a lot. The leader waved his hand, dismissing him, saying he could go away, but the man, stuttering yet defiant, shouted back, demanding the return of his sword, explaining that it was a precious possession given to him by his father. This irritated the leader, who punched out, shouting that he did not care about the man's personal circumstances. The man braced himself, tilting his head to take the hit, only for the leader's punch to be stopped mid-air. Haruto intervened, blocking the punch with one hand, leaving both the leader and the victim surprised. The leader shouted, wanting to know who Haruto was, shocked that his punch had been stopped so easily. Haruto calmly replied that he was an exchange student from Nakano High, looking for the highest-ranking student at this school. He then directly asked the leader where he could find that person. The defiant leader shouted he had no reason to give that information. In response, Haruto clenched the leader's, forcing him to kneel and scream in pain. Haruto insisted that the fastest way to find the top student was to ask someone hot-blooded like him. The leader's goons panicked, asking Haruto what he had just done and what he wanted, but Haruto just stared at them, repeating his question about where he could find the top. The leader, now visibly terrified, hesitated. Suddenly, a booming voice interrupted, saying, "That is enough." A sword was thrown at Haruto, and he barely managed to jump back in time to dodge it. Looking up, Haruto sensed the faint impression of an invisible blade aimed at, as if it had almost cut him. The true leader of the faction, Rado Nobunaga, had arrived with his members. Nobunaga sternly warned Haruto not to intimidate his classmate. Rado Nobunaga, third-year student who ranked third in the swordsmanship court at Azabal School, was also the head of the Kishin sword-style school and the leader of the Rado faction. Although the school administration had difficulties with his unruly behavior, Nobunaga's skill level was nearly equal to that of the top-ranked student, making him a strong candidate for a future teaching position upon completing the program. The intimidated man could hardly believe that Nobunaga, known for his formidable reputation, was now facing an exchange student. Nobunaga then asked how things had come to this point, to which Haruto calmly replied faction members were intimidating a student, pointing at the victim, and that he had just intervened to stop it. Irritated, Nobunaga turned to his men, asking if it was true. The aggressors denied it, claiming that the exchange student was lying and that they were just trying to save seats for the faction. Frustrated, Nobunaga approached his men and punched one of them. After hitting the other, he left the three on the ground. Nobunaga said he could tell they were lying by the restlessness in their eyes. He then took the student's sword, bowed, and apologized for the trouble his faction members had caused. As the leader of the faction, he expressed his sincere regret on their behalf. Haruto assured Nobunaga that there was no need to apologize, saying it was not a problem. Nobunaga then returned the sword to the man, who gratefully accepted and thanked Nobunaga. Naruto was surprised that someone so honest and straightforward led the faction. Standing up, Nobunaga remarked that he would have preferred to leave things in peace and enjoy the day, but leaving this incident unanswered would harm the faction's dignity. He then challenged Haruto to a duel and asked if he accepted. The intimidated student, visibly worried, advised Haruto to refuse, reminding him that Nobunaga was third in the school rank. Naruto, however, accepted the challenge without hesitation, telling Nobunaga he would gladly face him. Nobunaga thanked, saying it made things easier, and walked away, adding that he would wait for him in the arena after class. As Nobunaga walked away, Haruto watched him for a few moments. The intimidated student approached Haruto, stammering with concern, asking if he would really be okay. The student, visibly shaken, explained that Nobunaga was the third best swordsman, and asked why Naruto would accept such a risky challenge. Naruto responded by asking the student if he was okay with the way things were, pointed out that if they were not controlled, those bullies would harass him for the rest of high school. The man, holding his sword tight, replied that he was used to enduring and hoped it would eventually stop. The sword began to emit magic, making Haruto realize, activating his time eye. He recognized the magic within the sword. Haruto then directly challenged him, saying he was addressing the real person inside and asking how he felt when his sword was stolen. The man looked confused, so Haruto explained that even though he knew he could not win, he was still driven by something deeper. The man was momentarily and Naruto, frustrated, asked if he was really okay with leaving things as they were. After a pause, the man admitted that he did not want to endure it any longer. He wanted to confront them and keep his sword safe. Haruto smiled and praised his determination. He then asked for his name, extending his hand. The man shook his hand and introduced himself as Mitsurugi Ibuki. Haruto introduced himself in return, then encouraged Ibuki to challenge the leader of the bullies to a duel. Although Ibuki seemed shocked, Haruto reassured him, promising to secure his victory. He told Ibuki that they should both seek victory in their respective matches, to which Ibuki nodded in agreement. That moment, Haruto's phone buzzed, flood of messages. It was Yuzuki asking where he had gone and complaining that she was still eating, which made him sigh in exasperation. Later, in the waiting room at the arena, Yuzuki suddenly burst, shouting and asking what Haruto was thinking, agreeing to the sword duel on his first day as an exchange student. He tried to calm her down, simply replying that a lot had happened, which only frustrated her more. She demanded to know if he really thought that explanation was enough. Haruto shot back, reminding her that the council president himself had encouraged them to aim for the top rank, which led him to think quickest way up would be to directly challenge the third place holder. And Yuzuki, holding her head in exasperation, said she was surprised he had managed to set up a duel so easily. Haruto then mentioned that his goal was to reach first place in the rank so he could directly challenge the council president, defeat him, and then go home immediately. Ibuki was surprised by his boldness and asked if he was serious, but then calming down, he admitted that if anyone could do it, it would be Haruto, adding that if he defeated the student council president, it would be a historic achievement for Azabu school. Ibuki also mentioned that he could even win the legendary skill cube. Curious, Haruto asked what a skill cube was, since it was the first time he had heard of it. Ike explained that Mitsu, founder of the school, mastered the mysteries of the sword and encoded them in a skill cube. This revelation surprised Haruto, who remembered Muramasa telling him to unravel the mysteries of the sword at school. Haruto asked Ibuki what was specifically inside the cube, and Ibuki explained that it contained a unique sword skill that only Kidimso himself had mastered, the dimensional cut. Stunned, Haruto asked if this technique really allowed cutting dimension, and Ibuki nodded, adding that although it was just a rumor, no one had ever seen it in action. Haruto wondered if this skill could help his future self. Feeling even more determined not to lose the duel, he clenched his fist and declared his new motivation, fighting spirit. First he told Ibuki that he would be the opening act. Ibuki stuttered but agreed, nervously saying he would do his best. Ibuki then mentioned that the bully got furious when he challenged him to a duel, asking Haruto if he had any secret plans to ensure his victory. Haruto reassured, saying that if he followed his instructions, he would definitely win. He then asked Ibuki to show his sword. Later, at the Adventure Cultivation Agency arena in the Azabu branch, students gathered around the stage. They were cheering as Ibuki faced off against his opponent, the Brute. The Brute pointed his sword at Ibuki, challenging him for having challenged. He taunted Ibuki, promising to beat him black and blue, which visibly unsettled Ibuki, but he remained silent. In the crowd, Yuzuki watched nervously and asked Haruto if Ibuki really be okay. Haruto confidently assured her that Ibuki was fine and was completely capable of handling it. Moments before, Haruto had given specific instructions to Ibuki. The moment the duel started, he should draw his sword and make a single fluid strike without hesitating. Confused, Ibuki asked if that was really all he needed to do. Haruto nodded, explaining that the Brute would likely charge at him immediately, seeing him as an easy target. Haruto then advised Ibuki to keep his eyes open, look ahead, and execute a precise cut without hesitation. If Ibuki followed these steps, he would win. With determination, Ibuki agreed, saying he trusted Haruto's advice. Back in the present, Haruto watched Ibuki from a distance, smiling and cheering for him, saying he would definitely make it. Meanwhile, on the opposite side of the stage, Muramasa observed the duel participants. Watching the tense confrontation about to happen, the host introduced the duelist. Mitsurugi, class 2 foreign, ranked 3,424 in the swordplay, and Kenji Kentaro from class 2 Fahrenheit, also ranked 3,424 in the sword. Class 2 ranked 103. The sarcastic tone. Kentaro told Ibuki that after he won, they should keep getting along. Ibuki was silent for a moment, then replied, got it, adding that if he happened to win, Kentaro should leave him alone forever. He then shouted, calling Kentaro a shithhead, which infuriated Kentaro, who shouted back about Ibuki's audacity. The crowd was shocked by Ibuki's outburst, but Naruto simply smiled with pride, and Ibuki took a deep breath, nervously gripping his sword as he got into position. Kentaro opened his inventory as soon as the host announced the start of the match, drawing a second sword and pointing both at Ibuki. Haruto was surprised to see Kentaro wielding two swords, thinking he was either highly skilled or foolish. Kentaro charged toward Ibuki, just as Haruto had predicted. Ibuki remembered Naruto's advice to never look away from his opponent, so he fixed his gaze firmly on Kentaro's approach. Remembering the next step, he drew his sword and executed a powerful cut. Kentaro, caught off guard by Ibuki's speed, tried to block with both swords, but Ibuki's attack was so fast and strong that it sliced through both. Kentaro was thrown back, colliding with the wall and coughing up blood before passing out. His two henchmen were shocked while their leader, Nobunaga, just sighed in disappointment. The host announced Mitsurugi and Ibuki, and the crowd erupted in applause. And Zuki, a Mage, told Haruto that Ibuki had really won. Haruto replied that it was expected, explaining that Ibuki's sword was actually a magical sword, and Ozuki was impressed by this revelation. Earlier, Haruto had secretly used his time eye ability to glimpse the sword's property, realizing that it had a rare special effect. Contrary to what others thought, Ibuki did not have zero magic capacity. The sword continuously absorbed his magic, which led to its low evaluation. Moreover, the magical sword had the unique feature of releasing all the magic it absorbed from Ibuki in a single explosion. Since Ibuki had been carrying the sword for years without defeating a monster, it had accumulated a considerable amount of power. For some reason, Ibuki seemed unaware that his sword was magical, but Saruto knew that a win was a win. Shortly after, in the lounge, Ibuki enthusiastically thanked Haruto, saying that his victory was thanks. He expressed astonishment at everything that had happened since Haruto's arrival, saying he was repeatedly impressed. Haruto downplayed his role, telling Ibuki that it was all due to his own strength. He decided to tell Ibuki about the magic of the sword when they had more time. Turning to Ibuki, he told him that it was now his turn in the arena. Back in the arena, Muramasa was watching closely from above. Nobunaga Nabenaga told Haruto that he intended to give it his all, as he was fighting for the dignity of the Hidu faction. Haruto confidently replied that he did nothing less. The two of them drew their sword. Nabenaga rested his sword on his shoulder, while Haruto his lowered at his side. They stared at each other with a determined smile on each of their faces as they prepared for the duel. When the announcer announced the start of the match, Haruto noticed that Nabenaga remained still, calmly standing. Instead of making the first move, Yuzuki watched with concern, while the members of Nabunaga's faction, including a bandaged Quentaro, eagerly awaited their leader's victory. Muramasa watched in silence. Haruto wondered about Nabunaga's strategy, noticing that his stance seemed to leave many openings. Uncertain about Nabunaga's intent, Haruto decided not to go easy on him. He advanced to close the distance, but was surprised to see Nabenaga start to smile, releasing a powerful and familiar pressure. Recognizing it as the same intense aura he had encountered before, Haruto stopped in his track, activating his time-eye ability to analyze Nabenaga. To his surprise, he did not see any Chronos factors around him. He began to suspect that the best swordsman from Azabu school might be using a killing intent technique instead of relying on time-related skill, making time flow-based movement predictions in effect. Nabenaga then slowly advanced, stopping well within range before inhaling and activating a secret technique from the Kishin style. He unleashed a formless attack known as Nature's Aesthetic, which carved deep cuts into the stage floor with invisible blades slicing in all directions. Sensing the danger, Haruto jumped up to escape, but Nabenaga appeared above him in an instant. Cutting off his escape, Haruto managed to block Nabunaga's sudden strike with his sword, tightening his grip and channeling his strength into defense, which seemed to impress Nabenaga. Seizing the opportunity, Haruto threw a chrono punch toward Nabunaga's chest. Nabenaga activated Steel Body just in time, taking the blow head-on. To Haruto's shock, the attack left Nabenaga completely unscathed. Both fighters then stepped back to reassess their position. Nabenaga observed Haruto's ability to handle the invisible Kishin style and questioned the extent of Haruto's skill. Haruto, at a loss for words, realized that Nabenaga had absorbed his time punch without a scratch. Nabenaga then explained that his sword style emphasized not only mastery of the sword but also body conditioning, trained to be as resilient and sharp as a blade itself. Upon hearing this, Haruto took a deep breath, reminding himself to trust his instinct rather than rely on his time eye in this duel. Noticing that Haruto seemed to have cleared his mind, Nabenaga adjusted his own focus. Haruto activated his body ability, while Nabenaga used his stealthy step, both increasing their speed. Haruto rushed forward, delivering a powerful slap, but Nabenaga dodged just as swift, counterattacking with a precise strike. Haruto blocked, then spun in the air to deliver another attack. Nabenaga evaded, leaning back, anchoring himself by planting his sword in the ground. Supporting himself, followed up with it sent him flying, but he managed to regain control before recovering his firmly gripping his sword. Haruto acknowledged Nabunaga's strength, motivated by determination. He advanced again, confident that victory would be his. Haruto swung his sword back for more power and launched an attack against Nabenaga, who easily blocked. Nabenaga then moved forward, delivering a powerful strike and challenging Haruto to face him head-on. Haruto quickly jumped back to dodge, without even touching the ground, swung his sword back for another powerful strike. Nabenaga blocked too. The students watching were captivated, their eyes struggling to keep up with the intense duel unfolding before them. Many were amazed by Nabunaga's skill, but they also wondered who this extraordinary exchange student was, and Zuki, in a panic, questioned how things had escalated so quick, shouting that they might need to rethink the entire exchange program. Ibuki cheered for Haruto, while Nabunaga's faction shouted words of encouragement for him. Naruto told himself he could not afford to lose this match. Sure that victory would be his, he needed to save his future self, and this duel was a crucial step. Nabenaga seemed to feel that determination. Noting that Haruto was carrying a heavy burden, he appreciated Haruto's resolve, but knowing his own reason, he also could not afford to lose. Nabenaga increased the pressure around them, amplifying his strength and determination, which shocked Haruto when he felt the weight of Nabunaga's intensified aura. With his own serious purpose in mind, Nabenaga moved forward to attack. As Nabenaga approached, memories surfaced. At 8 years old, he told his mother he was going to school, to which she warmly responded. When he arrived at school and entered the classroom, he found his desk scrawled with hateful words, demands for him to leave, accusations of being a delinquent and poor, painful insults. His classmates mocked him, sarcastically expressing pity and pretending to wonder could have done such a thing. Nabenaga remained silent, sitting at his desk while his classmates laughed around him. Later, back at the apartment, he heard his mother begging a man for more time to pay a loan. The man expressed some sympathy, acknowledging that she was just a guarantor for her absent husband, but she was left with the debt. She apologized and promised she would find a way to raise the money soon. Seeing his mother's distress enraged Nabenaga, so he ran to a nearby park and unleashed his anger on a punching bag he hung from a tree, promising to become strong enough to change his life and protect his family. As Nabenaga became a boxer, winning fight after fight. After each fight, while collecting his winning, he remembered that he needed to get even strong enough to protect the people he cared about. One day, as he was leaving the ring, Muramasa appeared in the hallway, identifying him as the former elementary school student who had become an undefeated champion in the world of illegal underground boxing. Muramasa asked if he was the king of Nabenaga, and Nabenaga responded with suspicion, demanding to know who Muramasa was. Muramasa replied that he had watched Nabunaga's match and noticed his impressive physique, but warned that his potential would be wasted at this rate. Nabenaga got angry at the comment, demanding an explanation, and Muramasa calmly asked if Nabenaga was looking for money to support his family. Furious at the implication, Nabenaga pressed further, but Muramasa just smiled, handing him an envelope with an invitation to learn the way of the sword in the Kishiman style. When Nabenaga opened the envelope, Muramasa explained Kishiman style was perfect for those who excelled in martial art and suggested that after mastering it, Nabenaga should seek him out. Extending his hand, Muramasa formally welcomed Nabenaga to the Azabu school, a training academy specialized in fencing, and offered him a full scholarship to cover his tuition. Nabenaga pulled his hand away from Muramasa, crumpling the envelope with suspicion, dismissing the offer as suspect and possibly a scam. Then, when considering the opportunity come strong, he unleashed a wave of determination and agreed, declaring that he would do anything anything if it meant he could achieve the strength he desired. 2 years later, Nobunaga had mastered the Kishin style. A testament to his lifelong pursuit of strength, he began to understand why Muramasa, president of the council, wanted him to attend a Zabu school. In a place where everything was decided by the sword, individuals with troubled past and rough behavior naturally gathered. It became clear that Muramasa intended for Nobunaga to unite these rebellious students under his leadership, and soon he found himself in charge of the school's delinquents. Although Muramasa remained as enigmatic as ever, he showed Nobunaga a way to make money, allowing him to pay off his family's debt. For this, Nobunaga felt a deep gratitude. To outsiders, the tough group that Nobunaga led might seem like a gang of misfits, but to him, they represented other versions of himself, flawed individuals struggling to survive the best way they knew how. This in mind, Nobunaga shouted confidently during the match, declaring that he had no intention of losing, catching Haruto by surprise. Nobunaga then activated his secret technique, fisherman style, scenic beauty, which amplified the pressure emanating from his sword to a whole new level. Haruto was taken aback, feeling the power radiating from Nobunaga's blade dramatically increase. He realized that if fight continued this way, he would be overwhelmed by Nobunaga's sheer strength. Looking into Nobunaga's eyes, he felt a sincerity in him unlike any opponent he had faced before. Knowing he could not rely on his time manipulation skill, Haruto decided to trust in his own strength and the power of his sword, which had been his faithful ally in all battle. Haruto activated his Chaos Sword ability, summoning its power to face Nobunaga head-on. He unleashed a force that matched Nobunaga, pouring all his energy into the blade, calling the advice from his future self to become a great space-time mate. He must first live by the sword. Nobunaga was caught off guard, watching as Haruto laughed joyfully amid confrontation. Their swords collided with overwhelming force, pushing them back. Nobunaga, understanding Haruto's joy, felt a wave of excitement as they both charged again, putting all their strength into the next strike. When the swords collided again, the impact caused a massive explosion enveloping the arena in thick smoke. The audience held their breath. Yuki and Uke watched anxious, as did Nobunaga's followers, all deeply concerned for their leader. Muramasa, however, remained silent, calmly waiting for the outcome. As the smoke dissipated, both fighters became visible in the center of the stage. However, Nobunaga's sword was broken and blood was dripping from his wounds. Disbelief took over him as he realized that Haruto cut through his steel body, something he thought was impossible. When Nobunaga fell, he admitted to himself the power of Haruto's sword was unlimited, perhaps even surpassing that of the council president. The announcer stammered as he declared Haruto the winner, leaving the crowd in shocked silence before they erupted in disbelief. Zuke looked dazed with shock while Haruto remained calm, looking at Nobunaga as the healers rushed to attend to him. Murama, watching the scene, was silently impressed. For Haruto to defeat Nobunaga, ranked third, almost exclusively through fencing, he proved to Muramasa that Haruto was indeed the awakened one, considered him an excellent candidate to face the feared enemies that had plagued Zabu for the past 50 years. Meanwhile, Haruto looked at his trembling hand, reflecting on the intensity of the duel. He had not anticipated how thrilling the experience would be, and for a moment, he simply marveled at the joy of such a hard-fought battle. Later, outside the academy, Haruto was speechless when Nobunaga and his group bowed in unison, apologizing for the trouble they had caused. Haruto replied that everything was fine now, looking at Ibuka, who nodded in agreement. Nobunaga then lifted his head, thankful for being spared from additional complications. With a smile, put his arm around Haruto's shoulder, admitting that, oddly enough, losing so badly was refreshing. Haruto noticed how Nobunaga's mood had changed and how he seemed full of energy. Then, noticing other students watching them, he stammered, asking Nobunaga to take it easy, saying he did not want to draw more attention. Nobunaga laughed, reassuring Haruto that there was no need to be embarrassed. He explained that since the Reito faction had officially lost to him, they would now stand by his side and come to his aid whenever he needed. Haruto, surprised by this declaration, nodded and replied that he understood, adding that he would definitely turn to if he ever found himself in a tough situation. Nobunaga enthusiastically agreed, assuring Kudo that he could count on them. The next day, in his apartment, Haruto watched the news. The broadcast reported that, according to the Metropolitan Police Department, crime rates continued to fall nationwide, although damage caused by migrating monster species emerging from dungeons was increasing each year. In response, both the police and Japan's self-defense forces were seeking greater collaboration with the Adventurers Guild. The reporter also noted that, according to guild statistics, Japan's gross domestic product maintained an annual growth rate of over 10% since Dungeon began appearing worldwide 30 years ago. After paying tribute to his parent, Haruto grabbed his bag, while the newspaper continued explaining that the unique population of dungeon exploration specialists in Japan had given the country an economic edge. The government has taken proactive measures, channeling subsidies to Japanese companies and universities to develop anti-monster and magical stone technology. Rai handed Haruto his lunch, and he thanked her for making it. While he was putting on his shoe, she asked if he would be going to a Zabu school again today. Haruto confirmed, explaining that he was still in the middle of a student exchange program. Rai commented that it was night, mentioning that the impressive buildings of the school made her wish she could visit at least once. Haruto described the interior of the school as surprisingly old-fashioned, but admitted he was being treated like royalty there. Smiling, Rai remarked that it was wonderful for him to have such a normal school life. Haruto was touched to see Rue's bright smile, and wholeheartedly agreed with her. He then asked if it was true that she would be starting elementary school that day. She confirmed, mentioning that she only had memories of elementary school and needed to catch up. Naruto patted her head, assuring her that he would be rooting for her and that they both should do their best, silently promising to never let her feel sadness again. Later, as he walked down a street near a Zabu school, he heard a woman screaming for someone to stop and let her go. A man was holding her arm, demanding to know if she realized how much money he had spent on her. Some nearby students began to whisper, recognizing the woman as Malalu, a well-known influencer with over 3 million followers, who was about to debut as a singer. Soon, Haruto looked back, initially deciding it was not his business. Meanwhile, Malulu broke free, scolding the man for ambushing her and mocking him for being so brazen in trying to monopolize. Furious, the man warned that there was a recently discovered dungeon nearby, and it could be dangerous. But she kept running. Malulu only stopped when she heard something unsettling in front of her. Looking up, she saw a dungeon gate opening before her, and to her horror, monsters began to emerge. Creatures were Imperial Senate, classified as B-class monsters, designated for annihilation, with a subjugation ranking of 5 and a recommended incursion level of 10000, leaving her paralyzed with fear. Malulu fell to the ground, paralyzed with fear and crying as the monstrous centipedes advanced. People nearby were equally horrified, panicking as they questioned why monsters had emerged from outside the dungeon. Some speculated it was one of the migratory species, and chaos erupted as everyone ran to escape, leaving Lulu alone and trembling in fear. When one of the centipedes' heads opened its enormous jaw and lunged toward her, the onlookers screamed, convinced she would not survive. Suddenly, Haruto jumped toward the monster. Just as the centipede was about to bite, the ground broke beneath head, which was severed in an instant, spraying green blood everywhere. The crowd was shocked as the monster writhed in pain. Haruto calmly carried Lulu away from the creature. When she opened her eyes, she was surprised to see him holding. He gently placed her on the ground, asking her to run, and then turned to leave, leaving her speechless. Haruto paused near the centipede, hesitating. He did not want to get involved in more troublesome situations, but he knew he would have a hard time sleeping. He allowed those to be slaughtered. Then, to his surprise, he saw the decapitated head regenerating, reattaching to the creature's body. He realized that the monster had a regeneration ability. At that moment, a group of adventurers arrived. The group leader assessed the situation, asked if everyone was okay, and introduced his team as members of the Minato District branch of the Adventurers Guild. Spotting Haruto, they told him to back off, warning that he would be killed if he stayed. One of the adventurers reported to the leader that the monster was a Class B annihilation creature with an S subjugation rating, requiring an incursion level above 1000. The leader, visibly worried, noted that the group's average level was only 80 and doubted they would stand a chance. Another member suggested signaling the 7 sages for help, but the leader dismissed the idea, shouting that they would not arrive in time. No other choice. The adventurers prepared to fight, determined to protect the people despite the odds. Haruto watched them silently from afar. At that moment, one of the centipede's heads lunged to of the adventurer, who took defensive position, knowing they were at a disadvantage. Fortunately, a chain materialized, stopping the monster's head in midair. It was Haruto using his stopping chain ability. Perplexed adventurers wondered aloud if they had been saved. Haruto, not caring about drawing attention, activated his space-time magic to tighten his grip on the creature, and then used his body ability, propelling himself forward at high speed. Sensing the danger, the centipede tilted its head and spat a toxic liquid at Haruto. Dodged by jumping away just in time, and noticed the ground dissolving from the impact. The liquid deduced it was a corrosive poison attack and decided to minimize collateral damage. Suddenly, the monster appeared beneath him with its jaws wide open and bit down, seemingly tearing him in half. But Haruto vanished like a projection, shocking the creature. Thanks to his avatar replication ability, he avoided death, explaining that the version that was hit was just an echo of himself from 0.3 seconds earlier. He seized the opportunity, swinging his sword in a powerful arc that took his head off in a single strike. The leader of the adventurers was surprised when the huge head fell to the ground, and nearby, Malulu watched in awe. Haruto approached the decapitated head, placing his hand above it. What are your thoughts on the story? Leave a comment below and rate it from 0 to 10. I can't wait to read what you think.